All right. Good afternoon. Hopefully this video comes up, and man, this audio is we gotta get rid of this audio. It was like something. I want to say it was like cinematic or something, but it's yeah, we'll go with my lo-fi hip hop. Makes this a little bit easier to work. Okay, so I should be down a little bit. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Audio looks good, and you should see a map of the Earth on the screen. Hopefully this is all coming through. Let me see if I can hear myself a little bit louder. Okay, I think we're good. I'll get a little bit of audio. Okay, so welcome. This is the afternoon session for 3D Worlds Live. It's a new kind of live series that I started a couple weeks ago now. Basically an accountability stream for me as a 3D artist to share my progress when I'm working on, not being so afraid to kind of share things until they're done. Gives me a little bit of an agenda and a schedule every day that I have to hold to, including a beautiful early morning 5 a.m. stream that I do every morning, which is has been fun. It's been challenging, but it's been a lot of fun. The streams are split up into two, a morning stream and an evening stream or afternoon stream. This is the afternoon. Mornings are more about my kind of, core 3D work. So usually I'm working in Blender. I'm working on something I'm fairly familiar with, although we sort of delve into techniques that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with or I'm learning. But usually I'm focused on making a very specific piece of 3D art and selling it. In the afternoons, things get a little bit more weird. We get experimental, kind of work on different things that I don't have as much experience with. And ultimately, it all comes down to the same theme. And that theme is basically, I'm looking to recreate some of the most iconic landscapes around the world as 3D art. And in doing that, that process, let me just get you a screen here. There we go. That process is quite complicated, and it's one that there are pieces of, across the internet. I've certainly watched a lot of YouTube videos and tutorials and tried to learn this as much as I can, but what I haven't really seen yet, and what I hope I'll be able to do with this channel, and ultimately will eventually be, hopefully have some tutorial videos and more content. It's kind of coming along, is kind of like an end-to-end workflow to taking real-world data, downloading it from both free and paid sources, manipulating it into a 3D height map, into an actual terrain, using combination of real world data and some procedural data or procedural landscaping to add details to a terrain, and then ultimately bringing that in at real world scale into 3D tools like Unreal Engine, where we can then apply landscape and texturing and bring different components into the environment, and then do a lot of different things with it, including doing some cinematics, doing some virtual reality eventually. And where the stream gets really fun is we've been experimenting with bringing these 3D worlds into Fortnite and using UAFN, which is part of Unreal Engine. So bear with me as I go through this, because sometimes I do get a little bit turned around here when it comes to using OBS in my streams. So I'm just noticing that there's kind of a refresh on my chat. Okay, I think it's good. I think it's working now. Good afternoon. Hopefully this comes through. You should be able to see this on the screen. Beautiful. Okay, so I think that should work. I stream live on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and Twitter. Why do I do that? I don't know yet. I don't know where the audience is for this. Twitch is more about video games, and certainly there's some video game aspects to this, but we often go, a little bit off the rails when it comes to that. YouTube, I've got an audience, but I don't know if that audience yet is sort of kind of aware of what I'm doing and what I'm working on. So I've had some success streaming there. Twitter is where my real audience is in Web3 and the work that I do. But the actual live video functionality is pretty limited. I did get it running. It does run now. We are live on Twitter, but there's no way for me to really interact with the chat. It's a little bit less set up for live streaming than some of the other platforms. So that's a bit of a challenge, but we're there. And Facebook is my fan page that I've had for a while. I thought it would be cool to get some content there and start to stream. And I don't know. We're going to see. I haven't decided whether I'll keep this up with the, with streaming on all these platforms, or whether I'll end up, focusing on one platform or another. Maybe go to Twitch, in the afternoon, and maybe YouTube in the morning, and save the Twitter and the Facebook for like the weekly updates that we do. I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. So far it's been fun. There's been days where it's just been pretty chill, a few comments here and there. Other times I've had a few people drop by and ask questions and kind of interact, and that's been a lot of fun too. So whichever way this goes, we just keep working. Okay, so we are today working on the experimental side. We're working on 3D terrain and bringing that 3D terrain into ultimately Unreal Engine as our destination. Once we're in Unreal Engine, we can get creative, but we've got to get a real landscape in here, and you can just see the little screenshot of some work that I was doing a little bit earlier. But I want to go back, and I'm going to kind of show some of the process, and then I'm also going to experiment with some stuff in a tool called Gaia. So Gaia is essentially really meant to be a procedural terrain generator. And what that means is that, you can run a bunch of basically simulations that are realistic to the real world. So things like erosion, hydrology, stratification of the landscape, thermal erosion, all these different things. You can run these on the landscape, and you can change the settings, and you can adjust things, and essentially make a landscape that will ultimately look realistic, because it will have the same properties that the real world forms through, millions of years of terrain and erosion and glaciers and rivers and all this stuff. That's basically what Gaia is. But Gaia also works really well with real world height maps. And the main thing that I've been trying to do is properly bring in an area of interest. So I'll refer to this a lot in this channel, and I think we're going to use the opportunity here to really establish some of the important aspects of how I think about the 3D work that I do. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the stuff in this tool called QGIS. Give me a second, I'll flip back to that. This is QGIS. This is a geographic information systems tool. It's really meant to work with, we call spatial data. So data that actually has a proper latitude, longitude, a location on a map. And you can see here we have a map here of the world. And this is actually a styled map that I made from Mapbox. Which is a really cool thing I'm just sort of getting into now. I've been able to actually go in and make my own Mapbox style, which included bringing in the image that you actually see. So where was I just there? If I go to PureRef, so see this image that I have in the background. I was able to actually grab some of the coloring from this image, and I was actually able to grab a map. And you can see that map here. It's got some labels on it. I can control the colors. I can control the style. It even has some 3D aspects to it, I think, if I have that turned on. And if I scroll around, I can, hit control, I think. Yeah, and I can change this to 3D, and I put, just some basic coloring to make it kind of look a little bit different than a normal map. But this is a map that I could put on an iOS app, an Android app, a MacBook, a Mac, or Apple, a Windows app. It's a really like set up for third-party app products that use maps in their tools. But what I'm using for is just sort of as like a base map to help me kind of flip through and understand where I'm working. So I'm gonna we'll play around with a few things in here. I've done a lot of this before, but most of today is experimental. And, we'll learn some stuff if we stick around. Maybe we'll solve some problems. Maybe we'll just bang our heads against the wall for most of the day and never actually get anywhere. But we'll find out. Okay, so let's try a few things here. So first thing we got to do is we got to find Sedona. So I always find Sedona by just looking for Flagstaff, and I go a little bit south. And then my area of interest that I look for, my focal point is the Sedona airport. And usually what I do is I start to scroll a little bit south of the Sedona airport, and then the biggest kind of rock face, we call it, or biggest kind of feature of the terrain is this place called Cathedral Rock. And you can see on my map, you can see there's, it looks like there's got some trail data that we've brought in. So these are actual trails around Sedona. So we've got trails going up here to Cathedral Rock. We've got some roads rocking over here, some labels, but this is the basic area. And I can actually turn this one off, and we go to satellite view, just like you would on Google Maps. And notice that these are lined up. So Cathedral Rock. They're basically, the labels are different, but they're in the same place. So now this is a point of reference. I can look around and I can say, okay, where do I want to look at? What do I want to do? And where the place that I'm actually wanting to grab today to show you, I've done this before. I may just bring this in and then, kind of show you how I did it. But if we go to here, you'll see my face gets green is because I'm on this screen. If I flip this over to Pure Ref, you'll see it goes transparent, which is kind of cool. Just have to set this up to automate to make this a little easier. I just don't have it running yet. So if we look at my whole work that I've done with Cathedral, this scene, we call this kind of Cathedral world as a nice short form for what I'm doing. You can see I've got a bunch of reference data over here, and eventually I've worked my way to making this landscape photo, which is essentially taken from a very specific location in Sedona. And this location is called Secret Slick Rock. And it's a really cool formation that basically you can walk up to. It looks like a little puddle, but when you put your camera down low in it, like I just did here, you get this really kind of cool viewpoint of Cathedral Rock in the background. So we recreated this about 4 or 5 months ago in 3D right here. And you can see it there. And then we've been working on some 3D art in the morning, which is this sort of scene up here that I've been focused on. And then the afternoon, we're starting to now turn this into some actual interactive data. So first thing I'm going to do is I just want to get a little screenshot to add to my Pure Ref. So I'm just going to drop this in. So now I've got just like another reference photo. And I've just been kind of building this out to tell the story of what we're working on. Okay. Let me kind of walk you through what I have so far. Let me see if I can actually open this up and see. We're going to go into active projects. We're going to go into Cathedral, working, QGIS. And I think we've got some of these things in layer 5. Let me see if I can track them down. Not layers, not output. Maybe under 4. Yeah, I think this is the one that I want. It's either this one or this one. Let's try to bring this in and see how it looks. Yeah, this looks good. Okay, so this is the first thing about QGIS that's super cool. So what I did was I grabbed something called a geopackage. And a geopackage is just a file format type, just like a JPEG or a PNG. It's a little bit more complicated because inside of that data, it's actually a polygon. So it's actually more like in Photoshop when you're making you're working and you're making like a square or a circle, and you have the option to make like a smart object or actually an actual image. It's like more like a smart object. So it has actual like coordinates of each of these points. But what makes it special is that it's geo-referenced. So it's actually set up in my software with a real extent, and the extent being the top part, the bottom part, the left part, and the right part. And these numbers actually represent, it's kind of like GPS. It's a lat long. It's a real location. And it's really useful because I can just bring that into a map like that and it goes to a very specific spot. It's not like Photoshop where you drag it in, okay, you line it up, and it literally just comes in right where it is, and it's lined up directly on the location that I want. And then I can style it just like Photoshop. So in this case, I'll keep this color. What I'll do is I'll make it a little bit of a pattern here. And let's go. Make sure I was getting that right. Yeah, we'll do a pattern. Okay, there we go. Pattern, apply. And then I can change that color. We'll change it back to the red, which is cool. And then, we could go into like further stuff and make it more complicated, but basically this is it. Drop the opacity down a little bit so we can see it, maybe a little bit more. And there we go. So now we have an area of interest. And again, this is not Photoshop. We can't just move this around. But what this area of interest represents is where do we want to create our terrain? And the cool thing is, of course, if we do this, we drop this out and we leave this one in, we can see that we have the same area of interest overlaid on top of the satellite data. So just to organize these two, I'm going to grab these like this, and I'm going to group these, and we're going to call these base layer. Oh, my bad. There we go. Sorry about that. I was amateur streamer. Doesn't realize that he's not actually showing a screen. I was just showing that I have this nice AOI. It brought it into QGIS. It's locked into this position. I opened it up and was able to style it with whatever opacity and color that I wanted. So, if I want something a little bit more towards the orange color, we can hit OK, and now there it is. And we have two base layers. So we have this is called the Scobleverse. This is my specific Mapbox map that's colored the way that I want it. If I turn that one off, we have a satellite view underneath. And there's our cathedral roll. Okay, so let's bring in a bit more data here. I also have some layers that I've been working on, and I'm going to experiment with some of this stuff, and I'm going to show you where I got to on my last stream. So I think the one that I want is going to be, let's try one of these ones first. Okay, so this is projection system. It's going to basically reproject. It gets complicated, but it's going to reproject this onto the proper map. And this is what we get, just sort of as a test to kind of see how this works. I think this is an experiment that I was running, and what we're looking at is we're looking at data here that is a combination of radar data on the outside. If you kind of look closely, you can see the resolution here is kind of low. This is radar data from space, free data that I was able to get from the Japanese Space Agency. And then in the middle is LiDAR data, and this is higher resolution data. It comes from an airplane. This is from satellites. This is an airplane. And you can see the difference. It's just like a Photoshop file. It's pixelated on the outside and clear on the middle. In this, though, it's a very special type of file because inside of this file is a lot of height data. And what that height data represents on here is the higher the elevation of the map, the whiter or brighter the pixels are. So the white part, the bright part, really it's luminance. So it's really bright, but it comes across as a white color. Is the highest part of the map, and going all the way to the dark part, black part is actually the lowest part. And this makes sense because if you kind of think about a map like this, and we go back over to the satellite data, kind of hide this, look at the satellite data. I mean, this is obviously a mountain range. If you kind of look down here, you can see this is a river valley. And obviously rivers, not obviously, but if you think through, how the landscape forms, usually the river's at the lowest point. Makes sense, right? The water is going to flow to the lowest point in the map. And, everything else sort of has different parts of the elevation. So if you look at this, there you go. So what we're working on and we're trying to do, and what I've been kind of trying to come up with a process for, is I want this data right here. I want this red or orange box. And the reason I want this red or orange box is because it represents the exact, essentially like the exact location, the exact, it's the exact part of the map that I care about for my 3D scene. It's got the mountain range in here, Cathedral Rock. It's got the location that I took my photo up in the top. Up here is where I took my photo. From right here, Secret Slick Rock. It's got, a little bit of like this little road that's coming through here. It's got some river. It's a good area of the map. And if we're thinking about this in terms of a video game or an interactive experience, you can kind of start to imagine what this would be like. We've got some roads we can travel. We're going to have some trails, some dirt roads. We're going to have some hiking trails that go up into the actual, this thing is called the Cathedral Rock Vortex. It's kind of like I don't even know how to explain it. It's something to do with like energy, and people come to Sedona for this location because of things like this. I have to read up on that and try to learn a little bit about why people are obsessed with Sedona. But you can see this Cathedral Rock Trail pops up in here, and you can see there's a viewpoint that people go to. It's hard to see from here because we have heavy shadows, but there's actually a viewpoint up here. And we can do some really cool stuff. So, for example, I have downloaded some trail data. So I went on to all trails and I looked up some of these trails, and you can see them already on the map. But let's go and see how well this works. So we're going to grab the Cathedral Rock Trail, which if you saw on the map here is actually right there. And if we bring that in, I think we want I think it's the roots. Could be wrong. We'll just bring them all in, and then we'll figure it out. Oh, my dog is getting a little sick. Give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. Dog emergency. Okay, so let's get back in. Okay, so if the data came in, I just didn't know which one it is. So let's just kind of find out what we brought in. So we got some waypoints. They don't do anything. There's the track points, route points, and the route. Okay, so really I think we really care about the track. So we can get rid of all this. And there we go. So now you can see we have a line which comes in and it actually follows, pretty closely, almost perfectly, really, the trail, right? So this is GIS data, and again, I didn't have to move it. It just came in, and the cool part, once you kind of learn this, which is, got to tell you, something that I have got very frustrated with for a while. Yeah, it looks like we can do some cool stuff. So some neon, let's go. And let's change our color to kind of a cool blue. And let's bring it in. And there we go. So we can maybe bring that down. Oh, it's got a kind of a neon. Looks like neon. Low. 0.5. All right, that works. So there we go. So we have actual path data in here, and then check it out. We can go to this, and there it is. There's our path, and we can actually right-click this, and we can call this. We'll call this Cathedral Rock Trails. And what kind of makes this really cool when we're using this data is that I can go ahead now and I can import other data. Now that we know that we wanted the route, I think it was the route, we should be able to bring in another one. And if we copy, I think it's copy the layer, no, styles, copy style. I think that's it. Paste style. Maybe it wasn't roots. No, it was definitely root, wasn't it? Okay, 1.5. Yeah, there it is there. I just don't know which one again. So it's tracks. Oh, it's okay. So it's tracks. And these are the waypoints. These are route points, track points. I don't know the difference honestly between routes and tracks, but that's just probably it's probably an all trails thing. Okay, look. So now we can do that same thing. We can just right click styles. We can paste the style. And there we go. We got another trail. So now we can right click this and we can say this is Cathedral to Red Rock. There we go. And yeah, you know, it's pretty kind of cool once you kind of get used to it. If you watch my streams, you'll see the progression of my love and hate for QGIS. I truly hate it. It has some of the worst user interface, I mean, maybe ever. Hey, Saltwater Sean. Sounds like a familiar name. How you doing, man? Good to see you on here. We're talking map data, man. We're talking maps. I know you love maps. I know you're a map guy. We've mapped out many things in our life. If this is the Saltwater Sean that I know about, including some pretty epic photo shoots and some pretty epic adventures. So thankful that you're here. You know, obviously stick around as long as you want, but this gets kind of weird. You know, we're getting into some weird map stuff, but it can also get pretty fun. Hey, Saltwater Sean. Hopefully you can see that. I don't know if you have audio on too. That's the other thing. Yeah. So I'll sum it up, you know, or sort of sum up what I'm working on. Let me just save this first because QGIS will literally crash at any point just for no reason. So, you know, to kind of sum up again, what I'm working on is I focus on recreating real world landscapes in 3D. And in particular right now, we're working on this really cool place in Arizona called Cathedral Rock. It's this beautiful view here that I traveled to a couple times in the last few years to capture. Basically, this photo is kind of the primary focused photo that I've been working on. You can see it right here. And then in my 3D tools, I use a bunch of data, including LiDAR from fixed wing airplanes. I'm sure, Sean, you've probably had some experience with this. I don't know if any of the planes you've flown have actually flown LiDAR before. But obviously LiDAR is something used all the time in military and other places. But basically we've got some terrain data that comes from fixed wing airplanes as well as from space, from radar satellites. And we use all that to bring it into 3D tools and make this. Then we've been kind of messing around with some other 3D art. So this is a tribute piece that I've been working on. It's a 3D animation that goes between this cool vintage vibey camping scene and this night scene that I've been working on in Blender. And then today we have a lot of fun because we start to actually work on bringing the real world terrain into real 3D tools that you can experience, like interactive, like think video games, think VR, think stuff you can actually go inside the map. And it's a kind of a whole different process because we have to have scale and we got to have the real data, and we're sort of bringing that data into the tools and working with it. So I'm just showing kind of my process, and then we're going to get into some fun stuff. And again, I was showing here that we have, this is QGIS. It's a GIS based software. And what's beautiful about it is we can bring in different layers, and they're all geo-referenced. So they all line up properly on the map. So in this case, we brought in a couple trails, Cathedral to Red Rock and Cathedral Rock, which are now been styled and put on the map. And I was just showing off that process. We're going to add these to a new group. We'll call these trails. And then we also have an AOI, which is sort of our area of interest that we're going to recreate in 3D software. And that's this right here. And then beneath that, we've got our actual terrain data. So we've got some LiDAR data and radar data, and we've kind of shut this off. You can see we've got the height data in here. Lighter pixels on this screen represent higher part of the terrain. Darker pixels represent lower part. So we are actually working with a nice data set here that uses LiDAR high quality in the middle and radar lower quality on the outside. And then below that, we got our base layers, which is my styled map, which I did in Mapbox. Kind of got this cool, blue, and it fits my background image that you can kind of see here. It's sort of, I grabbed the style from this and brought it in. And that's using Mapbox, which is fun because you actually go ahead and set up everything with what do you want in the map. We can go in, and this is what's so crazy about this. I don't know if you have to refresh it, but I could go in and change the colors and the styling, and I could adjust like a ton of things. Like, what do I want in here? What do I not want? Like, for example, I think it's showing trails as blue when it should be reserved for rivers. I could change that, publish a new version, and then I can just use my, essentially like a key that I would go out and bring that into my map, and it would update automatically. And then finally below that, we have satellite. So you can see we've got the full satellite of the area. Bring on the AOI, and more fun, bring on the trails. You can actually see these trails line up properly with the terrain. And in this case, you can see this trail is going all the way up to this Cathedral Rock viewpoint up here at the top of Cathedral Rock. So we'll bring in one more trail, and then we're going to get on to something else. I have a bunch here. This is the important one. This is called Secret Slick Rock. And if we know, we just learned together that if we bring in the tracks and if we apply the same style that we just had, we see we have a nice trail up here. And this one in particular is important because this is the trail that leads to this location right here where I actually captured this image. This trail leads right here. And we can see this if we want to kind of go on a little tour together quickly before I get into this. We can go onto Google Earth. And we can go right here because I've been here already, and we can see, wow, we've got actually some cool terrain data in Google Earth of Cathedral Rock. And if we scroll over here, we can see Secret Slick Rock, which is where I actually went. And you can see there's the trailhead here. There's probably going to be a bunch of photos from this location. There's my spot that I shot from. All sorts of cool stuff in here on this trail. And then, if we scroll the map around and we kind of follow it through the woods, all the way down here, we come out in this area. And if we bring our map down here, this is the exact location that we took our photo right here. This one and this one. So that's it. We're kind of pulling all this stuff together, and we're going to bring it into some cool tools like Unreal Engine and actually walk around in it today on the map. So that's what we're doing in the next couple hours. And feel free to stick around. If you got to go, no problem. I'll try to clip some of this stuff and share it out in social media in the next little while. Okay. So that's enough with this. I'm going to show you what I've got, and I'm going to experiment with a couple things. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, underwater. Hey, want to know something fun? Underwater, definitely. I don't know a lot about how. I know we do have really good mapping, and certainly you could use the real, terrain data that they have for underwater elevations to bring into this tools. But maybe even more fun than that. Maybe more fun. I don't know. I don't know if you're a water guy or a space guy. You kind of live right in the middle of those two. I'll tell you what's really crazy, man. They have this data from Mars. So we actually have some really good terrain data from Mars, and I'm pretty excited. At some point, I'm going to actually make like a recreation of an area of Mars that is real data. And we'll get a little dude in a space station, a space suit. Hey, maybe we'll actually get a nice 3D model from the Canadian Space Agency, Sean. And we'll get one of those like nice, Canadian space suits that they wear at the ISS. We'll model a character, we'll bring it into Unreal, and maybe we'll put the first virtual human on Mars from Canada, from the CSA. There you go. See, that's how me and Sean, that's how our brain works. We pull these weird ideas together from different things that we're doing. Won't dock Sean, but Sean does a lot of different work in, well, I guess it's land, air, space, and water. Land, sea, air, and space. That's Sean's domain. He really sticks right to the, he focuses on those 4 areas. Okay, so here's where things get fun. Sean's my audience now, so I'm gonna just jump right into this stuff. So this is called Gaia, and this is where the world of 2D maps, which is this guy right here, get really, really cool. Because what we can do in Gaia is we can take data that we actually have clipped to this AOI. So let's grab that data first, just to make sure we're working with the right stuff. So I'm in my project folder, and we're going to, I think it's number 5, and we're going to look for merge. We're looking for merge data. It might be, no, that's not the one we want. Remove this. Radar clipped. I think it's this guy. Merged. My filing naming is getting a little crazy. Let's try this guy here. There it is. Okay, so this is our file we care about. So I've already gone through the work. I won't show you on this because it sucks, but you basically now have a beautiful height map that's clipped to this location. So it doesn't have any data outside. And what's really cool about height data is notice right here that there's these numbers 1523 to 1207. That's the actual height in kilometers of this terrain. And you can visualize that on the map. And if you want to even get crazy, you can say, let's change the color gradient. And you can, go in and adjust it and make it something different. You can colorize it. You can do all sorts of cool stuff. I think single band pseudo color will do it. And I think you can go in, I haven't done this in a while. You can go in and set your min and max, and you can pick different color schemes, and you can do all sorts of stuff. I won't do that now, but basically this is the 2D data. So watch what happens when you bring it into 3D tools. So this is Gaia. And now we've got a nice little flat surface. And we can actually go and we can bring in a file. And this uses a node system, which I will explain as I go because I love nodes. I'm a huge node nerd. And everything, I've actually been looking for Photoshop, like a node-based Photoshop, because I got so frustrated yesterday in Photoshop, actually this morning. Won't rant too much, but basically you'll kind of understand as I go why I like nodes so much. But nodes are really simple. Usually it's a file like this little square. Usually it has an output on one side and an input on the other. So it's basically processing it. It's just like, programming your code. And inside of that file is settings. So in Photoshop, it's like a layer. It's kind of a way to think about it. And the simple thing about a file node, which we have lots of nodes to work with, is just basically give it a file. And if we go in here and we go back to our version 4, and we grab that same file that we had, and I think we want this one. I think will work. Both are going to work fine. We'll go with rendered one so we can see the difference. So see this file here. If we open it, aha, we've got something in 2D. And I think if we normalize it, and if we bring it down to here, so I'll walk through this one step at a time. So what I did was, let's do it this way. Let's grab this guy. They're the same file. I just wanted to see if they did anything different. Okay, so first thing is this file comes in, obviously, like you kind of get an idea, but you see that the height data is stretching. And that's because what this tool is doing is it's basically projecting the highest part of the map in this file that we showed over here in QGIS. So it's taking the highest point, it's putting it at the top of a box, and it's taking the lowest point and putting it at the bottom. And what happens when it does that is you get this stretching. So it looks like bigger than it is. You can fix that if you know your terrain data info, which I do. So I happen to know that the scale, or the distance from one side to the other of my terrain, is 2750 meters, so 2.75 kilometers. And I know that the height is 316. And there we go. Now it starts to look a little bit more reasonable. You're like, okay, I can kind of see something that looks like what we've got here. So a couple other things I can do here to clean this up is I can just bring, this is a preview. So you have to kind of understand this. It's sort of counterintuitive. It's a little bit weird to think about. What you're seeing on screen is very low res. The max I can go up here is 4K. And even at 4K, it warns you. It's like, you shouldn't do this. And it will work because I've got a decent enough PC. But you can see it, even here, it's bringing in too much data. It's too detailed. But you can see there's a lot actually going on. Probably something like 2K would look not that bad. You can see we've got a bit of terrain data here. We can see the elevation changes. We can see the trails. And we can see where the data goes from good data on the inside to bad data on the outside. And that's basically our terrain map. Let's go back to 1K. So what I'm working on right now is I'm trying to, like, this data is very good and very accurate, especially for these mountain peaks up here. Because despite the fact that there's sort of some peaking and it kind of looks a little bit weird, this is pretty accurate elevation data and detail on a map. And what I'm working on is trying to bring in more detail on the outside. So you can see that there is stuff here, and we actually switch this over to log. I'll show you this. Let's switch it over to log. So log is like, if you think of like in video, right? You've ever seen log footage? It's super gray and grainy. You actually could, I could change my camera to it because I'm shooting in log right now. And you can actually then process that data and bring, like, you can expand out the histogram, they call it. So add more contrast, you bring more detail in, and you get a much better image, a lot more highlights, a lot more lowlights. It's kind of what the log is doing here. But I've been experimenting with this to try to get the most amount of data into the terrain, but at the same time, make sure that I'm not wrecking the natural height, because we want this to be accurate as possible. And the way that we can do that is we can apply something like this called a ramp. I think, no, or not ramp, curve. I think it's called a curve in Gaia. And you see right away, just to show you this, right away we have an error on the curve node. I just brought that in. But the curve node has two inputs. It has an input and a mask. So what it's asking for is give me something to apply my curve to. Just like in Photoshop, you know, you have a layer above needs something below it to apply to. It's the same idea. It's just, it's more linear and logical from left to right. And it's a lot easier to troubleshoot and understand, like, what is actually happening in a file. If you ever open a Photoshop file, you know, with 1,000 layers, like, good luck figuring out what's going on. This is a left to right read, just like reading a book. You're kind of telling a story. So we're telling a story of the file comes in, and now there's a curve node, and all we got to do is tell it, I want you to apply the curve to this file. And you can see something changed. We went from here to here. And you can see what happened, right? It basically brought that file back to something that looks a little bit more realistic with the terrain, but it kept some of the details, and we can actually see the difference if we wanted to go in and just grab another file. We'll just grab that same file again. We could have duplicated that. It's the same idea. But we want to bring in this guy here, and we can kind of watch, you know, we can do a comparison. So this is the regular one, the log one, and this is the log with curve. So I'm experimenting here to kind of get this right. And ultimately, I don't want to affect the terrain too much, but I do want there to be as much height and detail as possible because, yeah, thanks, Sean. I appreciate it. Sorry, I missed that. Thanks for joining. Pop by anytime. Always awesome to hear you and see you. And one of these days, maybe I'll I'll send you a link and we'll get you on a video chat, and I'll drop you right in the stream, and me and you can chat away while I'm working. It's something I've been experimenting with or looking into, how to bring other people in the stream. So thanks for coming. We'll see you again soon. Okay. So now, just, again, with this experiment, I now have a curve, and it's just like editing a photo. Honestly, it's editing a photo in Photoshop. It's the same kind of idea. It's not a histogram, but basically adjusting. If you've ever seen in Lightroom and Photoshop, everyone's adjusted a curve before. Highest part is the brightest part of the image, same as what we looked at over here, right? Actually, we can bring this one to show you this. This will be a quick learning thing. Like, think about this, like literally just like Photoshop or Lightroom. You're adjusting a curve where you're saying, okay, do we want the highlights to be a little lower, or do we want the shadows to be a little higher? We can adjust it. And just like a photo, we actually are able to manipulate this to bring in more detail. So watch what happens if you take the bottom, which is the dark part of the image, and it kind of brings the whole elevation up. And now we can add another node here, and we can bring this part up. And that's actually controlling, you can see it's kind of controlling the lower part of the scene. So if we wanted to drop that all the way down, we start to lose data, bring this up. And then we can go, and bring this one over. We can say, okay, let's bring this up a bit. There we go. We get even more height data. We can bring another one over, bring this up a bit. Sort of affects that kind of peak part. We can adjust that, and we can go even further, adjust that part of the data, bring this down, bring this up. So yeah, we're just sort of adjust this curve in whatever way we want to sort of bring as much detail out in this map as possible without going too crazy and causing this scene to sort of distort. Okay. So now, what I want to do is I want to basically keep a lot of the data that I've got here, but I want to start to transform the outside of this because there's no detail here, right? Look how bad this looks. We're going from here with this data, which is actually pretty good. And again, we're on a low preview resolution. So if we go to 2K, we can see, even though there's some banding in here, which we'll fix, you can see like there's actual... And you got to remember, scale wise, like if you took yourself and put yourself in the scene, you're like a quarter of this line, like not even, you're probably like an eighth of this. You're just a little speck here. So this is actual legitimate, like real good elevation data. And in fact, we've gone so far that we've actually created tiers. This is probably more accurate. This is solid data, but over here, it's nothing. It's just blob. But there is data here, right? It's kind of the same. There's this weird peak here, which we'll fix, but it follows the same basic shape. And if you go over here, it follows the same basic shape. But we just want to make it look a little bit more detailed. So I'm going to show you how I do that now. And this is, again, part experimental, but let's go through it together. So now, Photoshop left to right. We're going to do something. First of all, we're going to bring in a mask. Okay. And we're going to bring in a mask the same way. Actually, before we do that, let's rename our files before we get crazy. So we're going to say, height map merged, height map curve. And then this is our we're going to leave this down here as sort of a separate file that we can just kind of show off if we need to. Okay, so look, so we've gone from here to here. And the cool part with nodes, again, why nodes are better, I'm just clicking. I'm not hiding layers, showing layers, trying to guess what layer's doing. I'm just like, I want to know what this looks like here versus here. It's basic back and forth. And I can do all sorts of cool stuff like bypass, which is essentially the same idea as like hiding a layer. But it tells a real story, and it becomes much easier to work with across multiple programs as you go. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need a mask, and the reason why we need a mask is because we have different data. We have low-res data on the outside and high-res in the middle. And I've actually got some ideas of how we can deal with that at some point. So I have some some of this data, and just bear with me because I don't remember where I put it. I think it's this guy. Let's try it. Aha, it is. So, I mean, right now, this doesn't look like much because this is, again, a 3D tool interpreting 2D data. So this is the 2D data. It's just essentially a white square and a black square with some gradient, like a little Gaussian blur in between. That's all this is. But what it says is, aha, I see height data. White is higher, black is the lower part of the scene. We just interpret the pixels, and we even have a nice little bevel here in a gradient, both at the top and the bottom. See, it's not a harsh edge. It's actually got a nice gradient. But what we want to do is we want to use it as a mask to tell Gaia where to apply the next effect that we're going to do. So we're going to keep it over here. We're just going to call it LiDAR, because this is the inside mask. LiDAR mask. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some erosion. And this is the easiest, the simplest node within Gaia. It's also the most powerful, and you just saw it. I didn't do anything. I just dropped a node in. Look at the difference. So what this did, without any setting changes, is, and you can watch and see what it actually. Look at what it did to this part of the terrain, high res. It just simply imagined what would happen if some of this terrain got basically eroded over time. Could be wind, could be rain, could be whatever. There's different settings, and it deposited some sand. So that's literally all it did. It eroded the terrain and it deposited sand. But what you get is a much more realistic kind of looking landscape, where we now actually not only have, like more detail, but we've actually smoothed out part of the terrains. We've added a bit more kind of complexity to what we're looking at. And what it got really cool is what it did over here. So look what this thing did. It went from here to that. And that is the power of procedural terrains. And the reason why I'm so excited about this, because we basically just took a really crappy low res height data map, and we made it look like pretty close to this one. It's not perfect, but it's got some very eerie similarities to this side now, whereas before, after. Now, if we were like, well, we don't want all this erosion over here because this side is fine, what we could do is use our LiDAR mask, and we could tell the erosion node all these inputs, area, removal, mask. We say, hey, chill on this part of the terrain. Only touch this part. Now, it did the opposite of that because of the way the mask is, but that's easy. We can just invert the mask. And now here we go. So now what we did was we didn't affect this side of the terrain, but we affected this side. Before, after. You can see it. It really didn't, you can watch it here. Height map curve. It kind of affected it on that gradient, which is our mask that you see here. And it just sort of smoothed it all together. It didn't affect this part at all. Now, I don't think I need to do that, to be honest, because I think the actual erosion that was happening on here was okay without it. I think it's X. I never can remember the key command. Yeah, add the mask. Probably just needs to be reapplied. There it is. Okay, it's processing. And now this is trial and error. This is where it's kind of like fun. You sort of are just, it's a little bit of like AI kind of vibes, because you're just sort of telling it some settings and letting it run. There's even a mutant mode in here, which is wild, which will do random mutations of the same algorithm, which is like, you can imagine creating, 100 different terrains that are similar but have different properties based on, a random seed. And I got some ideas for what to do. But what I'm really looking at is how much did the erosion affect our height? Because if you look at this, you see what happened. We kind of wrecked the features of the terrain. And yeah, we added a bit of detail here, but I really don't want to do that, because this is real. This is actual LiDAR data. And if we go ahead and, erode it, what we end up with is just, I don't know, something that is not true to the terrain. So I can do a different kind of mask, and we're going to say, well, let's maybe not mess around with this height up here, with this data up here. And what we can do is we can grab a height mask, and that's basically, this is just a height, it's a height node. And keep in mind, again, we kind of have a story being told here, but we're going to get the height of the terrain, and it's going to output a mask. That's all this is doing. And the mask is very similar to this mask. So remember, this mask was, this is actually kind of nice. So this mask here, everything that's in the light color pixels was what was in the LiDAR data. So it's isolating out the middle and excluding the outside. Whereas this one is actually looking at the height of the terrain, and it's excluding certain parts of the height. And what we're going to do is just make sure that we don't include the other part here. Interesting. Just curious why it's grabbing that. Let me just see. Yeah, it was a little bit odd. A little bit odd that it was grabbing the middle. But either way, we can actually do this, right? So we can say, well, where's the min point we want? Well, we want there. And where's the max point we want? Well, we don't care. We want anything. So now we have all this. And the fall off is just the amount that's going to drop. So we can now go back into the min, and we can maybe set it a little higher. Oops. I don't know why that's sort of a little bit weird. Yeah, it's odd. I have to figure out what that is. It might be trying to read it from a different part of the file, but we can just control it manually. Okay, so we're just basically setting this mask and just saying, hey, just don't mess with this stuff up here. We want to keep the shape. You can actually mess a little bit with the bottom, maybe to here, but let's leave the top intact. And now we'll go back to our erosion, and we're going to bring our height and put it in the mask. And now we just want to make sure that we're doing this properly. Probably need to reverse it, so we can just invert this one. Now we're masking out the top and keeping the bottom. And now you can see the difference between this and this is that we did add some nice, detail around the actual rock formation. We still added detail around the rest of the terrain. It all looks good, except we didn't actually affect the top. And now we can do something really cool in nodes is we can bypass this. So we can actually bypass this node, go back here, and I think we can just do this with a keyboard command. No. Okay, watch. So we'll pin this one, okay? So pin this one this is what now, no matter what we click, we're always going to see erosion, and we're going to bypass this versus not. So this is our before after. So height bypassed, height on. There we go. So yeah, I think we've got what we want. It's actually slowing down here to process this. So let's just give it a second. Let's just want to make sure this is refreshed. There we go. Sometimes if you click around stuff too much in Gaia, it sort of freezes and you got to kind of click pause and restart to get it back. But this is it. A regular height with their curve without affecting. And what I like about this is that it actually kind of added a little bit of sedimentation around the top here. Maybe too much. So we could just drop this down a little bit so that we're not quite affecting that part of the terrain as much. Go back to erosion, and there we've got a little bit of a smoother line. Yeah, so that's basically stage 1. Okay, so the other thing we want to do is we want to try to bring a bit of strata to the landscape. So if you kind of look at this here, you can see, you know, there are kind of some stratification going on, but it's actually kind of weak. And the reason for that is because LiDAR is very bad at picking up like the vertical faces. You can see here it was able to get pretty good, but like it doesn't notice little nuances to the terrain because it's just the way that the LiDAR data works. It's not actually, you know, it's picking up a height per every single spot on the ground. So when you get these like weird things, it doesn't interpret it very well. So we're just going to try to experiment with bringing some of that back in. And this is, I've had mixed results with this, but I want to just see what we can get together on this. Okay, so first step, that was obviously too much. So we can just sort of start to play with the settings and see which ones ensure that we don't affect the overall height. I have to remember what this is. Okay, so that was a little better, but not quite. I think this is applying to only individual areas. Okay, that's better. Go back to normal. Okay. So we definitely don't want that. It's a little bit of trial and error here. But the thing that I'm noticing right away is like, I definitely don't want to affect that top part. So I can just go ahead and add that same mask in. And we know that now we're not really messing with the top area. I also noticed that there's some weird artifacting down here. And I don't know if this will work if I turn this on. There we go. It does fix up a bit of that. I'm not really happy though with how this looks. I don't really think it did anything super valuable. You can see it did get a little bit, but it also kind of really actually wrecked a bit of the terrain too. See, it definitely doesn't look good. So that's okay. We're just going to kind of play around with the settings and just see if anything here, you know, pops up as kind of a helpful thing. So maybe we drop this down. A little less pronounced, but again, I don't really see it adding a lot of detail for me. So I don't think any of these slant, I think, is going to be a disaster. No. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing, I've not been able to get this node, to be really honest, working great. So what I'll do is I'll disconnect it and I'll keep it down here for us to experiment with later, but I don't feel like it's what I want. I'm happier with this so far than anything else. Although I am a little bit, it is. Oh, okay. I think I have an idea. I was trying this earlier and I forgot about it. Let me just see if this works. I was looking at this displace node, and I might drop this displace node in here before we go here. Because what the displace node does is I think we can just get a bit of a overall height to this terrain. And I don't know if we want it before the curve or after. It's just kind of lifting the whole terrain up. I still have to play with this one, but now it's just kept a little bit more detail. And then when we erode it, yeah, it went too far. So if we go from here, I mean, we're just not getting that, no, I'm gonna skip that one. I think that maintains the best. We're gonna see what we can do. Okay, so there's a bunch of erosion settings we can look at. I'm just going to kind of see if we can get anything out of this. A lot of this stuff, honestly, is sort of just experimenting. You know, there's documentations on all this, but we're talking, you know, really, we're talking some pretty crazy processes. So even if you know the explanation of them, you don't necessarily know how they affect the terrain until you really work with it. Like, for example, down cutting is like the way that the sedimentation flows away from the scene. I'm just seeing if I can get the dock on it. So if you turn up down cutting, the amount of sediment that flows, I think, flows further away. So see, you know, at a low level, we get this. Versus like at a high level, you get that. Inhibition, I think, is how resistant that is to move. So I think if you drop the inhibition, it will flow further away. Yes, you can see it kind of flows further away and you get more sedimentation down here. Versus if you bring the inhibition up, you get, maybe you get a little bit of both. I don't know. Interesting. Rock softness is how much erosion really is being applied. So you can see less there. If you're dealing with harder rocks, you get a little bit more, which is actually maybe good. Get a little bit more. Yeah, this is cool. Feature scale, area effect, precipitation amount, flow, sedimentation removal. So this is how much sedimentation gets pulled away. So you can see, there you go. So if you want like a little bit more detail back to the bottom, you can add that. I like the sedimentation because what it does is it covers up a lot of the lack of detail at the bottom, right? So I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like if you think about, you know, the water is brushing off of all these rocks and creating these really cool formations, right? But then eventually that dirt and sedimentation flows down to the lowest levels and, you know, it'll get washed away with a river and you get all these kind of cool stuff there. But that's why, you know, at the lower elevation, the terrain is usually fairly flat. The higher elevation, you get, you know, the rock faces. So you can kind of see how that works. We also don't have rivers in here, which is going to be a fun one because we can kind of tell it where the rivers are from our maps, but we can also just let it simulate. So if we close this and we go to our satellite data, let's get rid of all these things. Bring this up here and we'll get rid of our trails. We just go to satellite. There is rivers here, and what's interesting about Gaia is it just predicts where there would be rivers. So it'll just look at the landscape and tell you where the rivers will go. But in a lot of cases, there's been some terraforming and, you know, they've got systems set up so the rivers don't overflow. But for example, if you looked at this map and you said there was like flood or lots of water coming down Oak Creek River and it got here, and what would happen if there's a flood? is that the water would flow here and here. But they have this set up, I'm sure, there's some things in place to ensure that the river doesn't go down this road. But you can even see the riverbed. I mean, it may actually be a little mini river here, right along the side of the water. Who knows? And you can sometimes go look at other satellite data if you wanted to find a satellite image from when there was the flood, because there was a big flood in Sedona, I think in 2016, there were somewhere around there, 2012, I can't remember. You could actually look and see on a satellite image if this is filled with water. My guess is it's probably a muddy creek, and there is a bit of a river here. And if there was a flood, a lot of water through this creek, you would probably get some flooding all the way down here. So let's try this, and I'll show you what Gaia can do, and then I want to mess around with a couple more erosion and some stuff, and we'll bring this data into Unreal Engine and see how it works. But just for fun, let's go and see what would happen if there were rivers on this terrain. So it's really simple. Again, we're talking, again, left to right story, right? Height map comes in, it goes through this curve. The curve then goes into an erosion. We use the height map to ensure that we're not eroding the top. And then we're going to grab that data and we're going to bring it into the river. And there we go. Now, there's interestingly, it will ask you, it doesn't know what's going on this map, right? So it doesn't know where the water, the headwater, where is the river coming from? And we don't know either, but we can kind of tell it. I haven't really experimented with this, but if you kind of look, headwaters are basically where these rivers sources. So if we look at Oak Creek and we follow it, and this is what's really cool about having these base layers, we can go on a little journey north. Did we lose it? Oak Creek, Oak Creek, Oak Creek. We should have looked up how far Oak Creek was. I'm still seeing it. Still seeing it. By the way, I already know what we need, but I'm kind of curious. This is my map curiosity here. And notice what's happening as I scroll. This is in GIS, this is tiling. So as I scroll, watch what happens. See these? See how they're coming in like old JPEGs, like old JPEG images that load. And when you have a good internet connection, they load quickly. And when they have a low internet connection, you'll see them come in slower. But as I ask for them, essentially by scrolling, we're getting more and more tiles of this satellite image, and that's what's going on here. It's super cool. It's basically just, we created our own little map system. Oak Creek looks like it ends somewhere in here, and then there's this pump house wash. There's a spring hatchery up here, which is cool. Looks like the wash continues to go, so it now converts into this wash, and it might disappear. Interesting. So we don't know where the headwaters are. I'm just going to Google it. What are the headwaters for Oak Creek in Sedona? Now look at this. This is stuff I love. I'm such a nerd when it comes to this stuff. Begin at about 5,700 feet. So that's in meters to just under 2,000, something like that. I don't know if I got that right. The Mongolo rim of the Colorado Plateau. Huh. Interesting. So, oh, okay. Confluence of the Sterling. I'm kind of curious. I don't know if this will find this or not. Whoa. So, somewhere over here, it's super interesting. Yeah. I mean, everything flows. Like, if you follow the water, everything flows down. You know, it's flowing from something further away. until you get to glaciers. But interesting. It's kind of weird and surprising that that would be what it is. Although that doesn't look... Is that Colorado? Oh yeah, because we're in Arizona. Colorado's north. New Mexico. Colorado. I don't know. Maybe that is. Anyway, the point of all that exercise of me just kind of going on a little rabbit hunt was actually just to confirm the location on the map that was. So we can go back to our data over here. It's north. I mean, that's all we were looking for, right? The water is going to flow in from somewhere up here on the map. So all we got to really do is look at our AOI, and we can just say that the headwaters are here. That's basically all we want to do. And I don't know if this is going to affect anything. I'm curious myself. So it's basically at the top of the map. Because, a guy doesn't know where anything is, right? It just sort of, it's guessing. So if we look at this terrain, the headwaters are basically coming from up here. So let's see what happens. So here we got the rivers. We've got some, we can adjust these things. We put the headwaters up to generate a little bit more water. Let's just crank this to its full, simulate the most amount of water we can get. And then down cutting. What is, just to make sure I get that right. What is down cutting? Road downwards. Oh, interesting. Oh. Huh. I'm not sure what down cutting is compared to depth in terms of how it creates the map, but you can see, kind of cool. We added a lot of interesting detail to this map here, and it does show the water. You can remove the water and just see what it did. I didn't mean to do that. I thought maybe you could not show it. Huh. I thought maybe you could. Either way, right, you can see that it's not just putting a river in. Look at the difference. It predicted where the water would run off, and it added a ton of detail to this terrain. Ton of detail, which is actually cool. It might end up being something that we use, but we have to be careful, because what's kind of missing from this is that it's sort of forming a bit of a non-Arizona red rock vibe. It's losing a little bit of its strata, so we got to be careful. But I just want to see what happens if we tell it now where the headwaters are. So this is kind of a weird area because there is no low-lying area that's coming from. But let's just tell it where it is, and we do this by, again, left to right. It had a spot, an input. It says, hey, tell me where the headwaters are if you know. And I'll use it in my calculation. So we need to tell it where it is. And the way that we do that is with a mask. And we open up this mask, and the mask is a special type of node that lets you paint on the landscape. So if we go out here and we say the headwaters were up here, that's it. And notice it translates to the 2D map. Actually, more like up here. I kind of got messed up because the map was so zoomed in I couldn't see it. But that's it. Basically here now we could reverse it. Can't remember if draw erase, so we could kind of get rid of something here, because realistically the headwaters are more up in this area. So yeah, that works. Let's just say that, and let's find out. See what it does. So we go back to our rivers, and we're going to input the headwaters and see if it has any effect. Okay, so it did something, but I don't know if it really did much, because really all it did, I mean, it really did restrict. I would guess. So I'm just thinking through this, and I could go read the documents and see. But I am just kind of curious. Huh. I mean, what it did overall was it basically assumed there'd be no water coming in from anywhere but here. But it didn't, you know, doesn't seem like there's much here in terms of the amount of water that we brought in, which is what I was kind of confused about. Is like, you would think it would be able to pull in, like, okay, here we go, a lot of water, and you would see kind of this all flood through here, but it didn't. I don't know. That might be something I got to look into and kind of learn how that works. In the meantime, I think we're going to just go without the headwater, but we're going to actually, you know, just kind of have it chill maybe a little bit on its amount. So we're going to back in here and take a look. For example, the depth is probably a problem, so we can bring that back. Didn't do much. So down cutting is maybe what's causing that. Yeah. So you can see down cutting is really, I don't know, the depth must be the actual depth of this river, because it's not showing it, but it probably has a, so down cutting at max, down cutting at nothing. So one of the ways we can kind of look at this as a reference is we can go into our Google Earth and we can get ourselves back to Cathedral Rock, and we can just kind of take a peek and just see if we have any detail here that would help us kind of understand this. So kind of look here, you know, there is actually a considerable amount of this down cutting through this part of the terrain and on this side too. So let's see if, first of all, Gaia picked that up, both this and this, and let's see if how pronounced it is without, and then we'll add it in and see. So keep that in mind. So let's go line this up. So it predicted correctly there would be a little bit of a potential river system here. Now it's going to be dry because we're in Arizona. There's not a lot of rain here. So it's not like there's water or river here, but there's a potential for a river here. And if it rained a lot, this would become a little stream. And you see this in the Rockies all the time. You see all these, you know, places that look like these little valleys, and they're not actually rivers, but it's just the amount of water. And if you get a lot of water, they become rivers. So we want to simulate more of the pattern over the water. So it did do it, but I think that a little bit more of that down cutting is going to make a big factor. That's probably pretty good. You know, we don't want to go too crazy like that. Oh, it's kind of nice. Maybe a little bit higher is kind of good. I kind of like that. Kind of like that. Let's go with it. I think this is probably pretty good. And then, you know, it's kind of fun. You can just sort of play around with this. Like I've done this before. Just type in another erosion node. Sometimes just adding erosion to erosion will actually do some cool stuff. So before we give it the river, we can do a second erosion node. First one, then the second one. See how it adds that even extra level of detail. We got to bring our mask in again. The only thing you have to be careful with, and you have to kind of go back all the time and double check your files. Okay, you have to kind of just see what you're doing, because sometimes you can really over impact the terrain. In this case, I think we're fine. We pulled in a bunch of data here. We kind of fixed it up with the height map a little bit. Then we eroded it again, and we added a river. And maybe we bring that down, cutting down a bit. Right? So, you know, you can also go back and you can say, well, maybe now we actually need more elevation down here. You know, maybe the actual problem is that, you know, maybe this part where, you know, maybe we actually need some more. And actually, this is kind of nice where you can actually create some steps in the terrain. Just realizing this. So you can kind of say, okay, well, where is this going to be? And you can bring this really close. And then you could bring another one in. And you could go up. Sorry, you could go over. And then another one. And then up. So it's kind of hard to see from here. But even by just manipulating, we created from this to sort of creating a bit of those tiers in the landscape. And we could probably even do that again up here. You know, we can go here, here, go up, go over, up. Yeah. Road, here. And I might even say that these settings are probably a little too strong. Again, the thing that you have to remember with working in Gaia is that we're in a preview. So even though like you don't see a ton of detail, this is at 1K. Yeah, Gaia's yelling at me to save. We should do that. Working. We're gonna line this up with V6 because that's what we've been working on. So, Gaia, Cathedral, V6. So even though this is 1K, right? And in default, it's a half a K. So like you're looking at this, you're going, are we actually doing anything? And then you go up to like 1K and it loads and you're like, okay, that's a little better. You go up to 2K. And now you can actually see, you know, you're starting to see some of the detail that's getting added. And when you export Gaia, you can export it at like 60. You go up to like 1632K, I think. 8K is like kind of the max terrain in what's that? In Unreal Engine. So like we're at 2K. When this goes into something 8K, you really notice these things. And this is applying detail to the terrain that you just don't get from the LiDAR or radar data. Height map, erosion, rivers. There we go. I'm just looking at the top of this to make sure we didn't do anything to this accidentally. It's the only thing I'm a little bit worried about. That might be from that height map. We might have just flattened. Yeah, we flattened this out too much. That's what it was. These actual curves need to be a little bit further over here. See how that kind of hits the top of that? It's all relative, right? Just sort of figure out. Right? So if I could get a full, like if I could get an actual full, like a big histogram of that, I think you could really go and do a lot of cool stuff with the terrain. So you can really create like terraces by bringing it back down. There's just a lot of stuff you can do there. And then we reapply all the processing. It goes through. And there we go. I'm liking it. I mean, there's still the strata thing that I haven't quite figured out. I don't know. I do not know which one is doing it. Interesting. I wonder what this rock shear does. That's interesting. So one of the things you can kind of do is I'm adding this mask in. So I'm just saying like just do it on the bad part of the terrain. There's something kind of interesting about that. Maybe we have to bypass the rivers. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just that needs to load. So this is what it's doing. It's definitely an interesting look, like especially over here. Folding, scale. Huh. It's really interesting. I don't know why it was not accepting my mask though. It doesn't like that for some reason. I'm not sure what it was. Okay, we'll get rid of that. So anyway, we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of keep moving because I mean there's stuff here. I'm gonna find something. I gotta go do like probably go through all these ones, and huh. I thought that did something, but I didn't see it now. Because what I'm really looking for is something that will give me like bring in more of that strata, and it could end up being, honestly, it could end up being the height, the curve. We could just go and add a ton of those little little steps, but yeah. Okay, so there's one other thing I want to try. Well, let me show a few things. We just kind of mess around with a couple things first, and then I'll show what I was working on in Blender. So I think I got something that might be really cool. Haven't quite decided how to incorporate it yet. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we rename this. We're gonna call this O1 terrain. This is how I've been working in these projects. And then I'm gonna create a new tab. It's gonna be called O2. We're gonna call this, we'll call this color for now. And basically what we can do is we can start to colorize this terrain based on some really interesting things. So start with the rivers, and we're going to make a portal. So all portal does, which is part of the whole node system that I love, and we can, you know, we can kind of clean this whole thing up, right, to make it look a little better. We can bring this down here, and we can have, there's even some reroute stuff we can do, but you get this awesome. I just love the look of these things. So basically this is our terrain map, right? We're going from here to here. And now we're just saying, hey, give us this output of the river data. And I'm just going to say, for now, we're going to call this terrain final. So just assume that this is all we're doing. And if we want to add stuff in, we move it over, we can readjust. But for now, we're saying, hey, this is the end, right? This is the end of our terrain. So we're going to go to color, and we're going to start with a sat map node. So it's just called sat map. And what sat map node does is coloring, and it's like a gradient, but it's like a gradient on steroids. So all we got to do is hook this up for now to our portal, to our terrain final. And you can already see, like, I did nothing, right? And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, okay, we actually have something kind of cool here. And all this does is it takes the height of the terrain and it applies this gradient. And you can see this gradient is, it's not like, you know, light to dark, or it's just layers, and it creates actual legitimately nice looking layers on the terrain with really doing nothing. I mean, it's all we did. Now we can go and we can go, you know, as far with this as we want. So for example, let's say we want some of the more sedimentation stuff, like some of the sand that we want to keep consistent, because like really this would be rock. So we can do, this gets really crazy. So we'll do this first. Let's grab another one. Okay, so we'll grab another sat map, and this one, I told you it gets wild. It picks a random map, and it just basically applied that same, right? Like it just, you can see what it's doing. It's literally just applying a gradient to the landscape. But really cool for Arizona for creating these sediments. It's just that it's applying it on top of this one. So I think it's like double the, that's why we're getting this like really, it gets really cool. You can go in sandy, rocky, blue, colorful, legacy. But if we go to rocky and we kind of look for that red rock, it's probably multiplying it on top. So let's just get rid of this one. We'll leave our current sat map. This is our current one. But you can do, just looking at it, you can, change the input clarity, which just sort of brightens it up. You can also add a bit of jitter, which sort of breaks up the terrain, although it doesn't look very good. A little bit better with that. And you can also add clarity on the output. You can add some noise to it. So now you see you got rid of the harsh lines there. Anyway, it's crazy that way you can do with this. So now let's go and add another sat map. But what we want here is to bring it in from terrain final. But this time we want to add basically some masking to it. And I think the way that we want to do this is we want to generate some masks first. So for example, I think we have one for the water. So if I go in here and I make this a portal, and I go back to here and I change this one to the surface, See what that does. Let's go to blue. Okay, so thinking through this here. Okay, I think I understand. So it doesn't, I don't think it matters what we pull in here. We can use that as the mask. So we're going to put them all in terrain final. So they're both getting the same data. This one is getting this is getting this, and they're just applying, one's applying blue, one's applying brown. So we can mask this though with, I think we could merge these two together. So now we're going to combine this, and that's why we get this color. We're going to change the ratio to 100, but we're going to grab the water mask, which I thought was that one. Maybe it isn't. Is it? This should work. Let's try one that I know will. Let's just try another one that I know will work. For example, we can get the slope. Okay, so this one's a little bit easier, and then I'll look into how to grab the water. So here with the slope, we need our data again. So we're going to grab portal and grab the terrain. So it's asking. And here's one that's really cool, because what is it doing, right? It's actually now predicted where the rock faces are. So here we can now add this mask to this one. And now what we have is everything that has the rock face is blue, and everything that has the non-rock faces is this brown. So now we just go into the blue one, and we can say, well, what does the rock face look like? Actually, you can actually calculate some of these. So like, take a look at the terrain and see if you notice anything about this. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. So if I look at the terrain, the only thing that I really notice is that there's like obviously clear strata on here, which we can simulate. But the colors are pretty close. It's not like all of a sudden like this gets totally different than that. Maybe it gets a little bit more the white patterns, whereas this is more of a flat, like anywhere where the surface is flat is maybe more of a flat red. That's probably the dirt and mud, which we can actually simulate, which will probably look really cool. And then when you get into like the cliff faces, they get more to this almost lighter red with white. Okay, so we're going to try to simulate some of that. And then once we get to the lower elevations, we start to get into the grasses and the green, which we can simulate where the trees would be in here. Hey, Evans, how you doing, man? Good to see you again. Hope you're doing all right. Yeah, we can simulate some of this stuff, and we can simulate and we can guess where the trees would be, which gets really fun because sometimes it's actually really accurate. Okay, so let's do this. Let's say this is going to be the we're going to call this sat map cliffs, and we're going to call this sat map ground. So we're just sort of identifying which of these ones we're going to use. So for the ground one, we're going to look for something that's got kind of like a static red. It's pretty flat, but I think that's okay, because for this one, we want something that's really aggressive between the whites and the reds. And the better, the more, like, look how many options we have, right? And we can actually, I'm pretty sure, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how we do it in Gaia. I'm sure there's a way. But I know in other tools, you can actually just scan an image and you can get those data. It's like we could probably go into, let's check this first. Custom sat map Gaia. Maybe it's a different I have a feeling it's just this node. It's this node. I'm curious. I'm just curious. I don't actually know if this is going to work, but if this doesn't work, we'll simulate one. But I'm curious if we went and we stole this. And actually, this is really good reference. I gotta steal this here. Okay, this is a really, really good reference because let's go down to here, paste that in. Because this is interesting. You could simulate this. This is some type of, I don't know if it's like, we'd have to look it up and see, is it erosion? What is it? But that's a really distinct pattern that we can bring in. We could use satellite imagery, but we could also simulate that with some type of, I'm not sure what it would be yet, but something that would simulate like kind of that gradient or that noise on the terrain. Okay, so let's go back to this. And what we're going to do is, I just wanted to see if we could grab, sorry, I got distracted. I wanted to grab that shot, which we did. Grab this one. And let me grab my snip tool. We'll just do new here, grab that. And then we're going to save this as projects, Cathedral, source. We'll call this, well, let's just call this sat maps. So I'm not really sure yet how we're going to bring them in. And now I'm curious as if in Gaia we can go file, save. I know I just did that before. And let's go to Cathedral source. Sat maps. Treat as RGB. What happens if we bring this into here? I don't think that's what we wanted at all. No. There's going to be a way to do it. I'm gonna look into it after. But for now, I think we're going to get close enough with this. So again, we're just looking for a red rock with like harsh white gradients. And by the way, they take these from real world data, so there's probably a good chance it's in here. Like this is getting into close. And you see what we did was we put it on the rock face, but if you look at the sat map, let's pin this. Okay, so we're pinning this. What happens is that it's pulling the whole range. So when it gets into this area here, it's too much. So we have to almost go and like for example, yeah, I don't think we can get, this is not the right one. Let's keep going. We want much more, we want like this kind of banding. See it start, you can kind of start seeing it. And if we clipped it to like, you know, we said like maybe this area here, it's only pulling that part out, that area. There's going to be a better one. I know it. I just have to think of. See what I mean? You start to see, because this has a lot of variation all the way across. So you get it here, and we can add in some noise and all sorts of stuff, but we want something that's kind of getting like that. Even something like this is kind of cool. There we go. I think you get the idea, right? You know, we're trying to kind of get something that has some banding across it. And this is probably a little bit too aggressive, but you know, the cool thing is with Gaia is like you can get so crazy with this because this is merging. But right now we're at 100%, but we can actually drop it down. If we go to 0, oh no, let's flip these. So let's reverse these inputs. So now at 0, oh, we should have got, interesting. Just go through this again. This is the ground. This is the cliffs. We're combining them together, and we're using this slope to decide where to combine them. So we actually need to invert this. Well, we can actually, because we're saying we want to tell it where the slope is. So actually what we want is no max. And then we want, so yeah, you kind of have to think through these things logically. So the way that the nodes work. So again, remember everything with the brighter the pixels, it's on. Let's call it on, or it's affected. It's in the positive. So now that we have our mask, what this is saying is everything that's light color or white is the slope. High slope, and we've set the min to 49 degrees and the max to 90. So it's basically anything that's above, you know, there's 45, right? So it's like anything that's like above that. And we could probably even go a little bit more aggressive so that we're getting like the true rock faces. We're not getting any of the kind of gradient slopes. Okay, so let's say that's that. Then what we're saying is the top one is the base, and then I think the second one is coming in and it's saying, okay, only combine this and this when this is white. So now, there it is. See, the logic of it makes sense. So now we have the mixture, but now we can also change the blend down and watch what happens. See, it's bringing back more of the red. And if we go all the way to here, it's all red. So we're actually blending these two together. And we're sort of just combining a little bit of the light texture with the right one. And again, we're going back to a reference, like, you know, there's stuff here that we might want to adjust in terms of, you know, this is pretty red, so we could go in and we could probably change brightness and contrast. So we could change the brightness of this one up a bit. We can adjust the contrast to whatever we want. And we can even actually change HSL. So we can change the hue, saturation, and luminance, which is actually probably better than what we want. So we can actually say bring the saturation down a bit. We can adjust the luminance value all the way down. It's kind of fun to get a little bit dialed in. And then we have our other one. We can blend that in a bit more. And again, we can always go back to the sat map and we can decide, you know, maybe that's not the right one. And we can kind of keep scrolling and look for You know, and we don't even have to look at the whole range. So like, for example, I saw one up here that had some interesting colors over here, but we can bring it in. Right, so now we kind of have whatever part of this range we want to use, we have it. And, you know, by the way, like we have so much that we could also adjust with that. Like we could, we're just applying it to the terrain as a gradient, which is actually kind of what we want right now. But we could really get, you know, kind of crazy with how we apply. See how this one looks. Which is amazing how many options you've got for this stuff. You know, even think something like this, you know, I'd like to get, like I'd like to have something with like a lot stronger banding, but I mean, there's just so much in here we can do. So adding jitter, post-processing, quality. We can apply some noise to it if we want. And again, we can go back to the blend, drop it down. I don't know if this is the right one. I'd probably be at this for 3 hours. Let me go back to the start and see if I can find one that and we'll lock it in. Oh, I'll get some music going. Let's do the now trending. Yeah, let's let this roll. Okay, so I wanted to do some water on here, and some grass. So like a cool way to kind of think about the grass one is just to do another sat map. Again, it's the same process. You could duplicate these if you want. They're all kind of the same. And you basically are getting the final data, and you can call this grass. And this one we can change to green. And we're looking for kind of, you know, again, you're looking at right. So this is the grass. We can get rid of that jitter. Right. So, if you look at the terrain, there's actually a lot of trees and shrubs. Really, there's no grass here. That's really what's interesting about Sedona. Is everything is really it's little blotches of trees and grass. So this may not be actually the best thing. But you know, here's kind of some cool ways we can do this. So what we can do is instead of doing the terrain, we can grab something else. So like we can grab a rock map, and we can feed the rock map into the grass. We just have to grab the terrain over here. That's why those portals are really happy. So now it's grabbing the terrain, but it's putting a rock map in. So it's kind of saying, all right, where are the rocks going to be on this terrain? And you can actually change, you know, the mount. And you can even change, you know, the density. And it's on invert. So you can, you know, it gives like this kind of thing, which is kind of cool. But what we want is we want it the other way. Yeah. So this is what this would be doing, is this would be isolating out the rocks. So we could do base here, and then we could mask out this. See, it kind of creates this. Okay, so let's try it this way. We're going to bring this one out, and we're going to go into the terrain, and we're going to merge these ones first. So now, if we kind of go in order, and this is kind of like layers in a weird way. It's almost reversed though. So it goes top to bottom, which is a little bit weird, but you'll see it cascade. So this is our base layer, and let's just say for now this is it. It's not bad. It's got kind of a cool texture and stuff to it, and forget kind of what's going on up here, but keep this as the base layer. And then we can merge the ground in, but we're going to do it based on where the rocks are. So what we want is this rock map to tell us, okay, everything here, let's give some rocks, and everything else in black is going to stay the grass. So all we got to do is add this as the mask. And now we've merged those two together. Let's change that ratio to 100. And there it is. And now, you know, you can decide, okay, well, maybe we need more or less. So that's more rock. Right? So you can kind of get a bit of kind of cool, right? Adds a lot of detail, because now you kind of imagine these riverbeds where there's mud and rivers flowing. Okay, we kind of got a little bit of dirt, and then obviously anywhere where there's faces, we have the rocks. And again, we could probably even, I'm looking like how we can kind of even remove it's probably fine. It's probably fine. So we're building up our map, right? So now we have our grass as our base, then we have our ground, and on ground is on top, and it's set up by this mask. So you can kind of like cascade it down with this mask in between. Now, instead of combining this one and this one, we'll combine this one with the next one. So we're going to cascade it down again, and then we're going to bring the mask. So now you can kind of tell a story, right? So now we've got, let's get rid of this because we don't need it. So the story is we have grass, and then we combined on top of it. I know it's kind of reversed, but think of the top, and then we're bringing in the ground, and we're masking it by where it's rocky on the terrain. Hey, Oscar, how you doing? Oscar Gaming. What do you do on YouTube, Oscar? Do you stream? Are you developing a game? Just a lurker? How you doing? Welcome. Good question. I am, so this is in a tool called Gaia, which is a procedural terrain generator. It's probably been used, or something like it's been used, in pretty much any kind of outdoor video game you might have played. Typically it creates terrain that is cool. Yeah, I got to get into shorts, man. I need your help. I want to talk, and you can share with some of the stuff, and see what you're working on. I want to start sharing out shorts. I haven't got around to getting a process down and clipping stuff out and doing it. So we got to talk about that. Yeah. So anyway, this is Gaia. And again, you would normally see this in a lot of video games. I'm only into this 3 weeks, Oscar. So I'm learning on the fly. So come along for the journey with me. Cause, I literally am just figuring this out as we go. And, yeah. Okay, so this is it. And what I do, well, what normally with this is you would, make a canyon, make a mountain. It's all fake. It's all not actual real location. What I specialize in as a 3D artist is bringing real world locations into 3D tools and building out different pieces of art, landscapes, different things with those real world landscapes. So if I flip over to here, this is a location in Sedona, Arizona. It's called Cathedral Rock. It's a very famous rock face. And I went there a couple times over the last couple of years, and I visited this spot. You can see it on Google Earth. You travel here to Arizona, and there's this little trailhead over here. And you park your car over here, and you walk down this path over here, and you get to this place called Secret Slick Rock. And if you move your camera down here, you can see you get this view. And this view, oh, I'm not showing it. This view here. So I was showing, I'm getting bad at remembering this, but I was showing that you walk down this trailhead and you get to this spot right here. And there's our actual Cathedral Rock. And if we go back to here, you can see that I actually took some photos here. So it's some real locations. Oh yeah. I stopped. I mean, I finished at the end of that stream, Evans. I didn't know you were watching that. That was funny. I got it. It worked. He's talking, I should take reference photos. He's talking about a crisscross thing I was working on earlier today. I'll show it. I got to open up Blender for something else anyway. But basically, I'll grab a screenshot of it and bring it in. So basically, like, I bring all this data in, I process it using these tools. I learn a little bit around using maps and GIS. So you can see this is that same location, and I have an area highlighted that I care about in this location. I bring all the data into Gaia, and I start to do what I'm doing now, which is I'm coloring it and just generally setting up the terrain to use in a gaming engine or into 3D software. And then I bring it into 3D tools like Blender. And ultimately, I always start by making a landscape photo that represents like the location where I went. That's my background as a landscape photographer. So I made this landscape photo in Blender that you see here. And it's basically a copy of the photo I took over here. And then from there, I start to have fun with that location. And I really try to, yeah. So Oscar, I don't know what happened. So when you were in here earlier, I didn't realize this was you. So when you were in here this morning, what was happening on the chat is all of your text was just little icons or little like C symbols. And I didn't know if it was because you were using a different keyboard or a language or something, but it just kept filling up with, like, we couldn't see what it was. So I was trying to see if I could, like, figure it out, and I couldn't. So I hit timeout. I don't know streaming. I hit timeout because I thought it was going to stop them from coming in. And it did. It removed them. But I didn't mean to, stop you from interacting. Whatever you're doing now looks great. I can see you great. And I'll follow you on YouTube and, hit me up with, your social media links and all that. And we'll get to know each other there. And I'll have to see kind of what you're up to. But yeah, so I start having fun. I start working on creating some cool 3D art. This is the current scene I'm working on, which is a follow-up to something else I worked on. It's a little scene in here in Cathedral. This dude's fishing, and then over here we get into this cool night mode that I'm working on. Yeah, it's all good. It's just we thought that maybe I didn't think it was spam. I just thought maybe you were typing in a different language and it wasn't translating right. That's kind of what I guessed. So yeah, what Evans was talking about earlier was I was trying to get this damn mesh to work on the balloon. So if you see in our scene, there's these hot air balloons, And at night, you can see them here. They're still there. But I want to turn them into something way cooler than this, because everything in this scene is kind of lit up in neon. So I have a friend who's a 3D artist who made these scenes. They're amazing. They're animations. And I really want to replicate his balloons. So I'm getting a 3D file from him, but for the meantime, I really wanted to see if I could do it myself. So we were working this morning in Blender, and yeah, there's the final result. It's not bad. English for me. English for me. Newfie originally is part of Canada, but yeah, English for me. What's your native language, and where are you coming from in the world? Same with you, Evans. You don't have to dox yourself, but I'm just curious what part of the world you're in if you're willing to share. It's okay. It's not perfect, but I've got a system. Like, these things are not connecting here. There's some little cleanup, but I'm pretty happy with it. Dutch, nice. I was in Netherlands for a couple months, maybe 3 years ago. I was in a place called Tilsenburg, and then we were in The Hague, we were in Amsterdam, there's a little town, I can't remember the name, it's got little rivers going through it. You basically take a boat in and wander around through all the houses. Man, Netherlands is beautiful. I love it over there. But yeah, that's the mesh. It's not perfect, but it works, and you're only going to see it like barely in the scene. It's just I wanted to kind of get it modeling right. No problem, man. It's great. Your English is good. Oh, you're Kenya. Nice. Another place in the world that I know about. I wonder, Evans, I wonder if maybe the connection is, I have a couple YouTube videos that I think are on my channel from, I helped put a computer lab in Africa. And I work with this young man. His name was Cristo. I have to look up his YouTube. He's a music video producer now. Does a lot of film. Really talented kid in Kenya. And he did a little video for me when I was there, and we chatted. And I think we probably got some crossover on our YouTube. I don't know if I went to Nemo. Is it a little town in Netherlands? I can't remember if I actually went to that. I'll keep answering questions. I'm just going to keep working here a bit while we go. Let me go back to my screen, and let's go to Guy. I want to finish this coloring. So I just had finished kind of getting a bit of the grass area in. And, the power of this is that I can pick my grass map. So, for example, if I want to bring in a little bit more of those kind of browns, we could do that, and we could change the bias. Show you this. So see how we get to the bias down on the ground? That's probably not what I wanted. No, I think what I had was not bad. Even this, and then just adding a little bit of noise to it. Always looks a little bit good with grass. Too much fine tuning is not even needed here. We're not even going to use this. Thank you, Evans. I appreciate it. Yes, you can, Oscar, you can tell a joke, as long as it's not going to get me banned from YouTube. I don't know what the Dutch sense of humor is like. Don't get me banned. I don't think you have to worry. But yes, give us a joke. Anyway, we combine these together, right? So now we have a little bit of grass and a little bit of dirt. And then I wanted to add in the cliffs. And now we've got a little bit of cliff on this. We can also do some stuff with the lighting here, which is kind of nice. So we can change the sun. So we can change this, put a little sky in here. We can bring the sun down in elevation a little bit for a sunset. and we can bring the sun there you go. This is not like this is not 3D software. We're not trying to do anything cinematic, but it's just kind of cool that we can do it. We can change the exposure and the sun intensity. We can go a little bit haze in here since we're in Arizona. I guess I don't know, maybe we can't. Doesn't seem like it's doing much. Anyway, it's all good. Yeah, no, don't tell a racist joke, Oscar. You know, you're not allowed to tell a racist joke. I got my finger on the ban. I'm ready. I'm ready for you. Won't even be there for a second. No, you're not doing it. You're gone. Time out. Can't get anywhere without these guys. Unbelievable. Here I thought Oscar was interested in what I was doing. He just wants to tell racist jokes. Get out of here, Oscar. I'm not kicking you out, but I did give you the... I wonder if I can do like... There we go. He's out. I'll give him a timeout and I'll bring him back, have a stern chat with him. Okay, so we combine the Satmat cliffs. And then I wanted to get the water. That's the part that I wanted to get. And I can't remember how to pull the water in. But let's just do the, we're doing the kind of the cascading thing. So we're going down like this. We're working our way down here. Okay. So we're going to grab another sat map. And we're going to hook it up to our terrain. This one we're going to get some blues. I think something like this looks kind of cool. And now what we want to do is we got to figure out how to get the river data in. We'll merge these two together. We want this to go below that. And what we want is, we want some type of mask that's going to tell us where our rivers are. And I thought it was going to be this one, but it doesn't seem like that works. No. Okay. Let's get a river mask. River. Just looking at the documentation. Okay, I'm just gonna have to experiment with this really quick. Because we have our river. Yeah, and Evans, you know, there's some really interesting tutorials out there, I'm sure, on large level creation. Obviously, I'm not a video game developer, so I can't get too crazy with telling you, you know, exactly how this goes. I'm going to show you an Unreal Engine here in probably about 15 minutes, but there's a lot more to it. It just, it's pretty incredible. It all based on height maps, though, so it's all based on this idea of you bring in something that simulates the height of the terrain. In my case, it's this thing. I don't know how to get that. Yeah, I can, well, it's like this. This is a height map, which simulates, you know, where the highest part of the elevation is and low. That's the root of it, really. That's the root of everything. So, sorry, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this water thing, and I know I'm missing something, and I just can't think of what it is. I mean, I could maybe get it. I mean, I could try with flow. All right. I mean, so the flow is interesting. And why that would be an error. I guess you can't use this as mask. So it's interesting. So it added a bit of the water to the areas where there's water coming down the terrain, but we don't actually want that. We want the rivers. You can do it with slope. I just know there's a way to do it. I'll just try it this way. So, again, we're gonna always have to give it this input. So we're gonna look at the slope now, and we're gonna say that we're just gonna do like no slope. So see what that did. It only these parts of the terrain are coming in. In fact, if we kill the fall off, I thought it would get it pretty close. So there, unfortunately, it was able to get the rivers, but it got some of this because we have a lot of data here that's flat, so that's not it. What would it be? Angle details for the growth. I just don't understand. I feel like it's coming out of the river. It should be. I'm missing something, and I can't think of what it would be. There's too much grass in here. All right. I always like to get the river, but it's all good. I want to get something I can work with. I do have Discord. I got to get these little links up here. I actually have my own Discord. So you're welcome to join my Discord and say hi in there. Or you can just send me a friend request. And yeah, I gotta put my stuff in here. I keep forgetting. Give me a second. Share. So this is my Discord, Evans. I'm actually working on some stuff. I want to get like it's running in my Discord so I can, people can watch the streams and interact in here. But that's my Discord link. And I'm just Scoble in there. You'll see me in the announcements and stuff. So you can just send me a friend request. And I'll say hi to you there. Up to you if you want to join that. But that's my... And then also my Instagram. Here's my Instagram, and here's my Twitter. There you go. Okay. Oh, that's not my Twitter. Apologize. I don't know if I can delete my own message. This is my Twitter. I guess I can't. Disregard the first one. Okay, back to my screen share, and let's take this to the end here so that we can see this working. Yeah, let's try a couple things. So first thing I want to try is I'm going to do a couple exports, and then we're gonna mess around with some stuff. So we're going to go O3 output, and what I do here is I grab. Now we have color, so this is color final. So if we want, it doesn't matter which one we pick because we're just coloring it, but we're going to add a output node. And what we're going to put in is, I don't think it's going to matter, but I think if we put the terrain final, it's going to be fine. Oh no, we do need a portal here. Curious what the separation does. I actually don't know. I'm just going to grab that too. Okay, so first thing we're going to get is the height map. And we're going to do this EXR format because it works really well in Blender. We're going to do this one. Let's just go crazy. Let's do it at 8K. The stream's going to get a little crazy, but that's fine. I think we want the range proportional sRGB. We're going to go into here. We're going to go into active. We're going to go to Sedona. No, Cathedral. And we're going to go to working, Gaia output. And we're going to say V6 outputs. This is what we're working on right now. So we're going to select that folder. And then we're going to do another output. And this time we're going to go... This time we have to get the data from the color. So we're going to grab the color data. And I'm going to try final. And what we're going to do with this one is we want a output properties. We want a PNG because we want color data. And 8K is fine for now. We're going just crazy because I want to see how this works. And then I'm curious because I don't actually know what it does, but I want to see. Is I'll go another one. In this one, I'm going to grab the the separation data. I feel like, oh, I guess it doesn't work. Okay, so that's no good. Okay, so we'll just grab this one. We'll grab these two for now. Okay, that's it. So we're gonna run the build. It's gonna get slow on my stream, but we're gonna let Gaia do its thing. Oh, here's nodes, Stratus. Okay, yeah. First of all, we're gonna save it. Thank you, Evans. I appreciate it. I'll say hi to you over there while this is running. It doesn't like having these extra nodes. You can ignore them, but it generally doesn't like to have nodes in here that it's not using. So we're going to start the build, and now it's going to start going through the process to export. And while that's happening, we'll go over to Discord. Yeah, I'm going to get some Discord stuff set up soon. There you go. You're live on the stream. Yeah, so this is my Discord. We're getting it currently reorganized, but typically I'll have some of my stuff in the lab. So I'll have some of my work in progress in different threads. So you can see some of the things that I've done before. Here was the work in progress for creating my render. So you can see a lot of the same stuff that you saw on the... Here, let's just go full screen with Discord. We'll go on a little Discord tour. You can see some of the stuff that I was working on, including some of the 3D scans here. Actually, that's not very good for viewing. Yeah, so some of the photogrammetry scans of the cactuses. This is the texturing for the mountains. You see the difference between my version. This is a photo, and this is my render. So it's pretty good, other than you can see some of the texturing here. And then here's the final image. You can also see this is a recreation I did of a photo gallery in New York City. So you can see there's the whole floor plan. And then the layout. And eventually some lighting. There's the full building. And then I actually brought this into a gallery. So here's the render, how it looks here. Starting to have some details. And here's the walkthrough of the full gallery in 3D tools. Yeah, I've got all sorts of stuff here. Here's some Unreal Engine stuff. So this is the video game stuff. Some early renders. This is a place in Oregon I've been working on. A 3D scene. Some night mode, Aurora stuff going on in here. Super cool. So you can go through the lab. I have to give access. It's going to be, we're fixing it tonight. It's basically, right now it's token gated for Web3 stuff, so my collectors, but we're going to open it up to everyone. So you'll be able to jump in here and see some of the stuff I'm doing. But yeah, that's Discord. This is still going, so we'll leave that for a second. And I'll go into Unreal Engine. And this, hold on. What was that program? It's like util. I don't remember. It was a utility I had set up that would just track my CPU usage and all that stuff. I don't want to go in and launch what I'm going to launch here in a second because okay, it'll be pretty quick after this. It's going to go through this to 100% and then it should be basically done. What else can we quickly work on? We'll open up our file. I don't think that's going to cause too much heck. So we're going into this new terrain and we've got this cool 3D tile thing. Let this load. I mean, basically what I'm trying to do through all this is, get really good data in here. I want to combine some data from Google Earth to give this even more fidelity, and also combine a height map, a satellite map, which just thinking out loud, maybe I can. Let me see if I have a satellite map for this. Oh, they're tiles. Okay, we'll have to export that. Oh, you see my dog? It's Alpine. You can see if maybe with the focus. It's hard to see the light. And she's out of focus. I don't know if we can focus on her or not. No, we can't. That's Alpine. Now the focus is off. Yeah. It's my little dog. She likes to hang out in here while I'm working on this. And then we'll go for a little walk or run after. Okay, let's see. Evans, where are you from in Kenya? I know a little bit about Kenya. You don't have to go specific, but are you near Nairobi or Eldoret or somewhere else? I spent a little bit of time in Kenya, so I know a little bit of it. Not a lot, but... Okay, we're at 85%, so I think we're getting close. I'm going to go for another probably half an hour until 5:30, so I'm going to Evans all... I don't know if you're sticking around or not, but I'll show some stuff in Blender, but I'm going to end this with some Unreal Engine stuff. So you can actually see this in a real map. So close, so close. Okay, this is loading. It's a little bit slow, but we're going to bring this in here. Yeah, Nairobi. Cool. Yeah, I didn't get to spend a ton of time in Nairobi, but I did go there a few times. Okay. Sat maps. All these are very fast. See, sat map, sat map, sat map. It was good. So my sister worked for an orphanage in Eldoret, and so her friend started it, and they didn't really work much in Nairobi, but they would found kids that were in Eldoret that were abandoned or had issues, and they would bring them in and give them schooling and give them a place to live and all this really good stuff. But I brought a computer lab, so old Apple Macintosh computers. I brought them over to Kenya, and we set up a computer lab there. So when we went in, we flew into Nairobi, but we didn't do a lot. We kind of went to this hotel that was secured in one side of the area. So we drive around, but really didn't get out to experience the city, or really, kind of see what it was like everywhere. Somewhere I'd like to go back to and just kind of wander around. I don't know how safe is. It safe? I've gone to a lot of cities that are... We don't really think about it a lot, but is it fairly safe just to be, wandering around, hanging out there? I would love to go back. And then we go to Eldoret and on that side, and go to the orphanage and all these things. So it was great. I really loved it, especially you get out in the countryside. It's such a fertile land. It's very so many farms, so many interesting things going on. Beautiful landscape. Especially in that Rift Valley in Eldoret area was really nice. Okay, so we have a couple files, and we actually need to do one more, and I just realized I missed it, but I think hopefully it's cached it pretty confident it will. I need one for Unreal Engine. So we need that same file. Terrain file. We'll do this one after. And this one's going to be PNG 16-bit. That should be it. Okay, so we're going to hold off on that. Okay, so here's what I was kind of messing around with earlier in Unreal Engine, or sorry, in Blender. So this is Google Earth data, and you can kind of see there's some really interesting pros and cons of this, and I'm going to highlight them quickly, and then we'll jump right into it. So this is massive data. I downloaded this last night from Google Cloud Tiles, or Google Photorealistic Tiles, which is a service that kind of provides the same thing you see on Google Earth. So if you saw on Google Earth, I actually downloaded this data because it has a lot of advantages. It has real satellite data that actually looks, get some weird flashing going on. I don't know what that's from. I don't know what that is. Weird. Yeah, it's got real satellite data, and it actually is, draped across the landscape really nicely. They did a good job. The bad part about it is really that it doesn't isolate trees out. So if you look here and imagine we're making a game and we want to put our own trees in. Well, you can't get rid of this data. And it's just these blotchy trees. And you could put a tree over top of it, but it doesn't look right. And this is actually something that is really difficult to work with in Google Earth, is the fact that it can't get around the trees. And the reason for that is a lot of the data is based on photogrammetry. Basically, they take a ton of photographs and they use it to recreate a landscape. It's actually really good. It does a huge advantages. Like you can see kind of in the river, you can see, how the terrain works. And you saw over here, this is where I took my photo. You can see there's pretty good detail. Very good for that. Very good for vertical surfaces. Very bad for adding trees that we don't want, because we want to add the trees after in our 3D software. And really bad for low quality textures. So when you zoom in here, this really loses its unique appeal when it's that small. And it also is bad for, what was one more thing? I can't remember what it was now. Just another note, this texturing, this consistent white to red pattern is something that we want to fix in our lower part of our terrain. So we can actually look at this part. I can't now move my map around. So notice that the texturing is kind of different. It has this internal pattern, but you don't really notice it because at this scale you see more of the bigger, but it's kind of a consistent repeat red with the white weathering of the rock. So the cool part of that is when we're in Gaia, next time we want to make an update in Gaia, we can actually add that style of coloring to the side of the terrain. You'll see in a second. Okay, so here is the data in Blender, and you can see it's kind of slowing down pretty bad. I'm going to save this and close it because I think don't think it's gonna love working together here. See if I can get some stats. CPU is fine. GPU is okay. That's a little bit dicey, but it's okay. So this is that data in Google, and it's definitely cool to have it. What I want to see is what this looks like compared to there we go. Let's clean up a little bit. I want to see what this looks like compared to the data that I just exported. So let's work with the data that I just brought in. So we're going to create a plane, and we're going to set it to the world origin. So we're going to set it to right into the middle for now. And we're going to scale it up. And we know that our terrain is 2750 wide, and we know that it's 316 in height, but we're going to leave that for a second because we're just going to we're just going to displace it. So what we do is we grab the plane, we go into edit mode, see this way, and we're just going to subdivide it. We're going to subdivide it 100 times. This is my technique. People do it slightly different. I always start with 100 because I find that gives you just like enough mesh to work with no matter what you do with the subdivision. And then the subdivision is what is adding more mesh to this. And you don't see it because it's applying it after the fact. I think you can see it if you can't even see it in here, but it's there. And it gets used when we add this modifier. So what we're doing is this, it's called the displace modifier. And basically what it does is it takes a texture, which we have because we just exported one a few seconds ago in Gaia. We put it under 6. Oh, here we go. Under this one. These two. It did some weird naming. We got this EXR file, and you can see there's actual data in here. And we're going to, well, we're going to see what this does. I don't know if this seems like it's a little bit, maybe it'll be okay. So let's go back into object mode and here, and right now nothing's happening, but if we scale the terrain on the Z axis, we'll start to see some data come in. See that? Just slowly coming in here. And actually, if we change the height to 316, this is what we get. Now we can smooth the terrain out. And now we can kind of get a feel for the quality of this by adding more subdivisions. So here's at, this is at 2. And if we go to 3, more data, and even more data. We'll go one more. I think it's probably what max we can go. Oh, we might have crushed it. We might have went too far. This might crash Blender. It's exponential. Oh yeah, it held on, but we don't need that much. So we'll go down to 4. So this is actually our data, and you can see the river that we created. You can see a lot more texture detail. And what I want to do is I want to see, one, now we can bring in for a shader, we can hit a new shader, and we can just go and grab the other file that we exported. So working Gaia 6, outputs 6, PNG. And now, fingers crossed, we got something. Seems like it did some weirdness to my terrain. But let's see, maybe that's our roughness. It did something, but it's not what I wanted. Oddly. Oh, I see. It brought the water in, and I didn't want to do that. That's all right. It's just sort of an experiment to see what it does. But it brought in the water, which I didn't mean to bring in. It's a shame. Okay, so now what I want to try is to see how this works with the other data and if we can somehow start to merge these together. So we have this Google data. And we're going to bring this out of the texture view. And we're going to see where our data is, compared to it. So this is our data here. So we bring it up. And it should line up. pretty close. And it just, what we've got is we've got kind of a merger between the height data that I created and what's coming from Google. And there's two reasons I wanted to do this. One is I wanted to really see where Google's data has a lot more detail than what I have in mine, because I want to try to steal some of that data. And you can see it here. If you close mine, you can see that we kind of lost a little bit of the ridge here. So even the scale. Yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, we lost a little bit of the ridge here. So, you know, there's a little bit more ridge data here. This over here is interesting. I don't know. I'm going to kind of see. I feel like this is going to end up being very close, even though Google's got a bit more of the ridge, like the inverted ridge. You can actually see it if you close that. Other than the height issue, which probably from our erosion, the general layout is pretty close. And then this is the area that I shot that I really don't have a lot of data for. This is the one that I was hoping I could steal some stuff. See the difference? There's sort of this nice flat ridge here, whereas with the Google data, it looks much more like this. It's actually, this elevation is higher, which is something that we can fix up. So anyway, it had the idea. I kind of just was curious how this would all shape up. But ultimately, I'm going to combine these, and I'm going to kind of steal some of the data from Google. I'm going to steal some of the data from here, and I'm going to put this all together into like one height map that I'm really happy with. The problem that I'm dealing with right now that I don't know if I can solve is I want to delete all shaders from Object Blender. See if this works. So what happens is Google uses tiling, so it has thousands of materials, and I just want to try to get rid of them all. Oh, that didn't work. This music is getting depressing. I was hoping I could delete all these at once. Seems like there should be an easier way to do this. Let's see what happens if I go into the Blender file. I don't know if this will work or not. This is just so many materials. I might just crash Blender. No, so far. Oh, and then it put them. All it did was erase them from here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to solve this one. If it crashes, I'll just go into Unreal. I can't tell if it's actually doing anything or not. I still think I need to literally manually get rid of every one of these. Okay, I'll come back to this. I'm going to just try to solve this on my own. All I was going to do is add some detail. Let's go back into Gaia and let's get a height map that we can use in Unreal Engine, and let's bring this data into Unreal and just see what we got. So we'll go into Cathedral V6. It's going to go through and load. See if this has got cache or not. It may not. Ah, that's too bad. Might have to let that export to bring that into Unreal. I don't know if I'll have time. We'll see. We'll go back in here and I'll work on this. There's got to be a way to do it. Can't seem to get rid of these materials. My PC can't handle both Blender trying to handle this Google Tile stuff and the Gaia stuff that's going on right now. It's slowed down to a halt. We'll let that finish, and then we'll do some Unreal Engine quickly before we end this. Yeah, no problem, Evans. Appreciate you coming in. Yeah, come by anytime and say hi on Discord, and let me know if you're working on anything I can share or support you. Okay? Have a good night, man. Just letting this finish here. Here you can see what's going on. It's just exporting the terrain. Almost done. Okay, almost finished. Okay. Okay, we have a file. I don't know whether this is gonna work the way that I want it to, but we're gonna see. I just want to end the stream with jumping into Unreal Engine. Come on. Okay, there we go. I think this is good. Close pure ref down. Close this down and this down. Okay, hopefully that frees enough space up to launch Unreal Engine and to show this. Okay, so we're going to go into our current file, which is this one. Hey Clayton, I'm actually getting close to the end of my stream right now. We're just wrapping up, but yeah, basically I am a 3D artist, so I specialize in recreating real world landscapes in 3D tools. So we've been working on a few things, but basically we've been working on getting real world data for a place called Cathedral Rock in Arizona in USA. And we've been working in a tool called Gaia to process that terrain and add some, detail and textures and stuff. And we've been experimenting with merging that with different data and sort of trying to get a really good terrain that we can work with in Unreal Engine. And I'm just about to test this, so this is either going to work or not. But I'm just about to bring it into Unreal Engine right now and see how it works. So you can watch that, and it's either going to be a huge epic failure or it's going to be not bad. So I think it's make sure I get the right one. I think it's this guy. We might have to mess around with the scope of this because this is going to be an 8K terrain. But we're going to just bring it in and see. So, import. Yeah, here while this is importing, I'll show you if it might. The stream might go crazy. My PC just went nuts. Unreal Engine's pretty quick with this. I don't know if it's going to be okay, though. I don't know how good it's going to look. Yeah, it worked. I don't know if the scale is right, but okay, so we have terrain data, which is cool. It's going to slowly kind of pull everything in here. Okay, and now we just need to add some lighting. So I've done a couple different options with this. I'll do Alter Dynamic Sky today to show you guys. So this is a paid plugin in Unreal Engine, but it is really phenomenal how good it works. So let's bring it in and look at that. Not bad. Right off the bat, I'm noticing some stuff, which is that terrain is not, the height is wrong, but that's fixable. It just might be the way I exported it. going to probably be painful, but let's see what happens here. That's a little better. It's a little better. It's still not quite right, but it's not bad. Okay, so now we can go kind of a little tour, and you can see now, like, there's no texture in here, but now all the detail that we added. So what we were doing, Clayton, is in Gaia, we were really adding a lot of texture detail, including these little river areas of, you know, where the water would kind of come down the side of this terrain. You know, some erosion, sedimentation. We were adding a lot of stuff to this terrain to kind of give it detail, and you couldn't really see it in the other software. But now when you get into Unreal Engine, you can kind of see there's a lot more here. We did mess up a few things, but I think those are fixable. Yeah, we got some stepping going on here, which is not what we want, but we can fix that. But I would say it looks pretty good. So now let's, what we can do is we can add a texture. It's still not perfect height-wise. I might want to add a bit more height to it. But the cool thing on Unreal is, like, we got full control. It's we really, what we did, you'll see it. I don't want to go switch programs because this is taking up a lot of processing speed, but what's happening is the terrain has got lots of height. It's just that we lost the steepness of the top part of Cathedral. So we lost a lot. It should be up like this, somewhere in here. I don't think adding more of this is going to help a ton, but yeah, let's just leave it here now. So we'll add some texture to it. So I'm working on my own landscape material, but it's still a work in progress. So I'm going to use a third-party one and just bring it in, and so you can see how this would start to imagine this looking. Oh, I just realized I want something else out of here, but that's fine. I'll do this first. Okay, so sorry, I was distracted. So we got to go to the landscape, and the first thing we have to do is go to Brushify. We'll go to materials. We'll go to landscape. We're going to just grab the basic landscape material and assign it to the terrain. What's going to happen is the terrain's going to turn basically like a black color, which is fine. Yeah, thanks, Clayton. I appreciate that, man. It's been a grind figuring this all out, but I've come a long way, and I have a pretty clear vision for where I want this all to go. I just put my head down every day and kind of try to learn it and get better and get better and get better and better. And then the streaming is now a chance for me to actually kind of show people what I'm working on and get some interactions going. But yeah, so now it did what I said. It was going to go into this black color, but now we've got some materials we can paint. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick the desert one. It's not perfect, but it's better than this. It'll give us a starting place to go with. And then I might actually go back into Gaia and see if I can get us some masks that might be helpful here. I don't know how long that'll take. We should be ending the stream actually here in a few minutes, so we'll do that tomorrow. So now we got, you can see we kind of got some dirt material, which is better. It's got some scaling issues, but at least we have something in here. And then what I'm going to do is come back to this vantage point here, and let's just dial in a bit of settings on the lighting. Actually, let's do this first. Let's go into the material. Let's turn on this. Oh, it's already on. Okay, so that's not to cause an issue. Okay, so go in here, back into selection mode, and we can start to play around with some settings. So this is where I really enjoy how this works. So We're going to simulate real sun, real moon, and real stars. And all of a sudden you can see right away, it looks better. We actually have a bit better lighting on the scene. We're going to go in and we're going to first just turn on Aurora. We're going to turn on the clouds, volumetric. Project mode is that. We're going to go to, don't need to animate anything yet. We're going to change these to full cinematic quality. So we're going to bring the cloud quality up. We're going to go to sorry, just give me a second. I just got to add a couple settings that I don't have enabled. Volumetric fog. A lot of stuff in here. Lens flare. We're going to go to anamorphic. Actually, no, we'll go to 35 prime and light bloom. Those are my main ones. Okay, so now we've got like something that kind of feels, hey, it feels pretty cool, right? We've got a little bit of something here. So now we can do is we can adjust some of the fog settings. So we can actually go the bottom altitude of the clouds. That's kind of cool. We can bring the clouds down if we want. What we were looking for is our height fall off for the fog. So see, this is where you kind of get it on the ground versus a little bit lower. And we can drop the density down a bit. We just need to get the base cloud density to point like 001. And then I think that we can control the fog. Yeah, with that. So now at low, got a little bit of fog in the background, but not much. We can look at the cloud coverage. So we can do something like that. So we have a little bit of shader, a little bit of shadowing going on. And now we can do is we can control the time of day. Right, so we can go into kind of a nice night mode. And we can even change, this is the north yaw. It's basically where the sun position is. So you can see the difference between like having maybe the sun all the way behind with like the cool, you know, we can have like the cool bloom effects, or yeah, we can bring it all the way around and kind of have it. I kind of like it on this side for just for now. I like how it casts like a bit of lighting, but it still has that, yeah, something like that. There's actually also a dust setting in here. I'm just going to see, I've never used it before. Adds a little bit of haze to it. Thanks, Clayton. I appreciate it, man. I got one more trick up my sleeve. That what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to bring in now some. They're basically they call them splat maps, but I'm just going to use them as just standard masks. So basically, I'm going to bring in some masks that tell us where we should have some grass, where we should have rock, where we should have some exposed rock, and we're going to adjust all the textures so that this landscape starts to look a lot more like not just, not as plain. And I'm also going to experiment with bringing in a satellite map so that I can actually bring in some satellite data into this so that you'll actually see something on the ground as opposed to grass. You can start to see some other data. I've got some buildings to bring in. I've got some roads to make. I've got a lot of stuff, but we're getting really close to being able to focus our time on Unreal Engine and actually start building out this scene. One more trick up my sleeve that I think is kind of cool is, well, a couple things I'll show. First one is that the beautiful part about this time of day simulator is watch what happens when it goes to night. Got some like real aurora going on and some stars, which is pretty cool. And you know, we can adjust then the fog level to make it a little bit more hazy. We can kind of do anything we want. I'm going to go back to that kind of morning. Okay, so we just get some kind of cool lighting going on in here. And notice the clouds, right? So we can even adjust the cloud amount, and we can even bring that cloud down if we wanted over top, kind of do a thing. And there's a bunch of stuff we could do around the scale of the clouds. But for now, I want to just kind of bring it in like that. Or even just bring it back up. Okay, so here's the thing. So now this is why Unreal Engine it's just amazing. So you can see here, I'm going to go into here and I'm going to add a pack, and they have some built-in ones that are really simple, and I'm going to bring in a first-person one, make this really easy. And then we're going to bring the first-person game mode in to the thing, or to the map, and then we're going to go into our settings, and we're going to change the project settings, and we're going to go to maps and modes, and we already have it set to default third person, so we're going to change it to first person. And now from here we can pick a player start, so we're going to add a player start, and why don't we just put it right in front of us. And if we hit end, it'll drop to the ground. And let's just make sure it's not, yeah, it's there. Okay, so now we've got a player, and now we can literally grab, I have a PlayStation controller here. I can grab that. Oh, actually, this may not work because I don't have this all set up. But okay, look at the clouds. I got beautiful clouds in here. Everything looks good. In fact, while I'm here, I'm going to grab a high-res screenshot of the scene. Here we go. But now we're going to hit play. And now we're on the ground. Now we're over our texture streaming pool, which actually, hold on, let me fix that first. I can't remember the command. I just got to add a texture buffer, or it's going to look really bad. What is it? Add, increase texture streaming pool. Yeah, let's see what we get here. Okay, so let's grab this. Go back to Unreal. Full screen. Oops. Full screen. We're going to do... Oh, let's try to save it now. Damn. So we're going to add this console command. We're going to change this. I think that should be okay. I have lots of video RAM. Hopefully that worked. Let's go up to 10. Equals 10. And I think that's going to work. Let's save it. Hopefully refreshing this will bring those textures back. Hey, that's awesome, Claire. Clayton. That's super cool. What a smart thing to do, man. What a smart thing to do. I, pick up a little code here and there when I'm working on these projects. Oh, texture swimming pool is over budget. I wish I had picked it up. Like, I wish I'd actually worked on it, to be really honest. It's such a good skill. What language are you learning? You have anything you're specifically like trying to accomplish? Yeah, be careful with my stream. I do a little bit of coding stuff, but very little. I'm not a developer, so be careful. Don't copy my habits, but certainly there's some really fun stuff you can learn in here, and we can chat about and work on together. Hey, Christopher Yak, how you doing, man? I wish it would output that result. I don't know if that saved it. Yeah, the compute, and I work with a lot of developers. I don't know what happened to that, honestly. I think that I lost all the texture. It's still over budget. All right, well, we'll do it. It's gonna look like crap. That's gonna annoy me. It's really gonna annoy me. Why? I mean, it's a massive texturing. It's a massive landscape, but so always, anytime I do something in Unreal, I always think I'm gonna regret. The texture quality is so bad. Let me just reload this and see if that fixes it. It should only take a second. So it's really beautiful about this, and the reason why I'm so excited about Unreal is that the way that you can handle landscape textures, you can have a really high quality close-up texture for the ground when you're walking around. Think of like a first-person shooter game. You've got this awesome. Yeah, absolutely. If you're gonna work on something, 100%, I can make you. I can definitely make you a good landscape texture. Are you going to use Unreal Engine? As if you are, then you are in luck. I'm happy to do it. It'd be fun. We could stream it. You could tell me what you want and give me criteria, and we'll make it. And then I'll hand it off to you, and then you go do some streaming on your own. I had to pitch streaming because I've never done this until 2 weeks ago. It's awesome because you want to be working, right? If you're learning game development or coding, you want to work. You don't want to be like on social media too often. Yeah, this texture thing, I don't know. Well, we'll fix this tomorrow on the stream. But I still wanted to show this to everyone, even though it's going to look really bad. Okay, so even though, ignore how bad the textures look on the ground, it looks like an old video game. We can actually run around in our scene, right? So we're kind of on the ground. You actually see our hands pop in every once in a while. And we have full, kind of first-person game mode control. I don't have anything enabled for running, so he's super slow. But the cool thing is I can go and say, let's drop this guy up on the top. And again, our textures are terrible, but check it out. We climb up to the top of this thing, and we've got the landscape below us. And we can start to add, whatever detail we want. We can, obviously make this look way better, but, the idea is that we actually have, real terrain data from Arizona, from Sedona in here. Yeah, whenever you get there, keep me posted. I was just gonna say the streaming is really cool, man. Like if you ever want to do it, it doesn't take a lot. I started out with just a webcam, and I was using the headphone microphone, and I'm just kind of learning some stuff now. But it really is cool because you work away and you just, sometimes no one's here. Like no one's watching. I'm just by myself talking to the camera, streaming, and then you have like a devlog. You have everything that you've done on your project that you can reuse as videos. You can edit, cut stuff together for the future. It just gives you a lot of flexibility. So I just switched over to third person view, and now look, we've got a third person camera and a character. The scale of this terrain is actually way off. That's why I realize now. So I think because I imported it as 8K and the terrain's only 2K across, we basically doubled the size of the terrain. So if we actually wanted to get that down to correct, I can't remember if I exported this in RAW or not, but we've got something. Go into selection mode. Let's see this. Yeah, we just made the terrain way too big. It's going to be 27 kilometers across, and right now it's 8. So we can just do some math on this. Well, let's just say it's about 30%. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. Things you do in Unreal Engine that you regret. Changing one of the scales to 30%. Now it's going to process it all, and then I wish I could have just locked it in and changed it all at once. It's going to be all stretched and be all disaster. It's probably going to crash. I may end it here. I like this view though. Let's take a so we stretched it. So let's do this one now. That wasn't that bad. I was curious if the scale feels better for me. And then the height is going to have to be, let's say approximately a third. Let's bring the height down to 50. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, do it, as soon as you start getting in, because even if you're just, working on something you're not sure about, I've had people come on the stream and be like, hey man, try this, do that. They've been helping me out. I've had a really great experience streaming, and it does sometimes is a little bit draining, instead of just working, but it gives you a plan, it gives you a schedule, it gives you something really, to kind of do every day in your process. Sorry, I just got to grab the player start. Where is it? Is it going to be like way the heck over there? Oh no, it's fine. I'm just curious how this looks now. Yeah, so the scale was massive of that terrain, and you can see this does feel a little bit better. The scale is a little bit off, but even now the textures are a little bit better. They're still not great. There's tiling and stuff, but that's all good. And now if we go back to the top, we put our dude, we put our little dude up here. There you go. This feels better. There's a bunch of stuff. We'll get rid of this tiling. We'll bring in proper textures so that this doesn't look good. We're going to fix the rock faces up. We're going to bring a bunch of mega scans in. We're going to add all the proper texturing to the rivers and the rock faces. It's going to look good when we get it in there. And then we're going to start to build it out. So Clayton and sorry, who was the other guy? Christopher. What this is going to be is, I'm going to work on some cool cinematic stuff in Unreal Engine. So I'll add some little gameplay elements and just sort of wandering around mode to kind of test out the highest fidelity. But we're actually going to build this in Fortnite, and that's where it gets really fun, because we're going to have a game map. And I'm not a Fortnite player at all, but I really recently discovered how powerful it is. So if you're a Fortnite player, I'll be able to invite people and they can actually try this map out with me in real time on the stream. So we're gonna have a lot of fun. Appreciate it. I'll be back early tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Eastern, to do another stream, and then again at 2 o'clock tomorrow. So appreciate it, and I appreciate the subscribe and all the love. You should see all my social media there. Send me a message, and feel free to drop in anytime. I'm happy to chat. So have a good night. Clayton, have a good night. Christopher, anyone else watching, I'm gonna end the stream now. Have a good one.